across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Oh, there you are on this sweltering day. Good afternoon and welcome to Drive Time right here on Talk. I'm Kevin O'Sullivan and I'll be your host for 3 electric hours of news, views and topical debate all the way to 7 o'clock. Get on the show, get it off your chest. Get on the phone and call me on 03444991000, or you can WhatsApp voice note me on the same number and I promise to play your message out. It is Tuesday, May the 26th. Here's what's coming up. She's distressed, upset, and had not the faintest idea that her husband's bizarre spending habits were not covered by his legitimate income from his role as Chief Executive of the Scottish National Party. Former First Minister Nicola Sturgeon, Queen of Scots, has a problem, though. That problem is that no one believes her. How could she share a home with Peter Murrell and not question the £2,600 salt and pepper grinders, the £3,200 coffee machine, the £57,500 Jaguar, the £120,000 motorhome, the Beatles Memorial fountain pen, the £100 designer pencil sharpener, and this just in, a £943 oak library ladder. So many other luxury items were also purchased by Morell during a prolonged spree that we now know was funded by £400,000 of embezzled SNP money. Despite her protestations of total innocence, Sturgeon is facing growing calls to come clean about what she knows. 03444991000. Also, I want to talk today about the fight on the right and the furious feud that could pave the way for an Andy Burnham triumph in Makerfield as Rupert Lowe's Restore candidate looks set to take vital votes from his sworn enemy Nigel Farage's reform hopeful Rob Kenyon. That will gift Makerfield to Burnham. He goes to Westminster. He becomes our extremely left-wing PM, our extremely left-wing Prime Minister. Is that what you want? Can they not sort something out? Because if they don't, if Restore and Reform, Rupert Lowe and Nigel Farage do not come to an agreement, that's it. Burnham wins. It's as simple as that. Don't kid yourself otherwise. Let me know what you think. 03444991000. In other news, the 3 teenage rapists let off with a slap on the wrist by a judge who praised the way they handled their trial will now have their ludicrously lenient sentences reviewed after Attorney General Richard Hermer agreed they should go to appeal. Will Judge Nicholas Rowland be punished or sacked for his OTT kindly treatment of the monsters who subjected their terrified underage victims to horrific ordeals? If not, why not? 03444991000. We barely have any mechanisms to punish or sack judges, no matter how stupid their verdicts are or how ridiculous the sentences they hand down. Why can't we punish judges? We need the right to do that, don't you think? 03444991000. Meanwhile, it transpires that the number of rapists avoiding jail sentences has rocketed over the past 3 years. Surely raping a woman should be an automatic prison sentence. It is, apart from murder, it's the worst crime you can commit. How come people are walking free after being found guilty or committing rape? Walking free after raping women. What's going on, folks? 03444991000. Also on today's action-packed show, the grown-up migrants who pretend they're children. And finally, We will take a look at Prince Andrew, the former Prince Andrew, who now faces serious accusations that he behaved inappropriately at Ascot. And we now learn that while he was wasting Britain's money, swanning around the world at our expense as a stupid, ludicrous trade envoy who was actually lining his own pockets, doing nothing but his country, he successfully lobbied the government for an increase on his expenses, persuading our government that he was playing a vital role in promoting trade around the world. Yeah, right. What the hell is going on? 0344 499 1000. We'll talk about that later. All that and so much more. Don't go anywhere. Stick with me right here, right now on Talk, the home of free speech and common sense. Let's spend Tuesday afternoon together. Let's go straight over to my first guest to go through some of the big stories of the day, of this very hot day. He is a senior fellow at the New Culture Forum, Philip Kisley. Hi, Philip.
Corfu, what a scorcher. Hello, Kev. It's great, isn't it?
Yeah, no. We're all going to be dead by tomorrow.
We're all going to die.
Haven't you? You've got to tune into the BBC to get the warnings. You know, don't go out, draw the curtains, drink 14 gallons of water every second. You know, I go out on the tube down here on the underground system, and there's a public service measure. This is a public announcement. It's very hot. Drink lots of water. It's like, shut up. I'm not 2 years old. God, it's so ridiculous. It's a lovely day, everyone. Enjoy it. How about that? I know that's controversial, but enjoy the lovely weather and don't worry too much about dying. In all probability, despite what the BBC threatens you with, you probably will survive. Seriously. Let's talk about Makerfield first, shall we, Philip? Because I think this is getting serious. Big piece there by Leo McKinsky in the Mail today, asking Rupert Lowe whether or not his ego really will prevent him withdrawing his candidate, his Restore candidate, from that by-election. Because if he doesn't, he's liable to pull in 7,000 or 8,000 votes, and that will make all the difference. If that Restore candidate stays in position, if she fights the election, then Andy Burnham will win. Everybody knows that. And if Restore Britain, Restore UK cannot be persuaded to pull their candidate, that is going to be the outcome. Rupert Lowe's ego, if you like, will prevail, and Andy Burnham will win that seat. It's as simple as that. If the Restore candidate stays, I don't think Reform can win. Nigel Farage making exactly those noises almost as we speak.
Yeah, I think it speaks of a really broad rift in the right, and this is very serious because, as you say, it's a gift for the left, and it's a gift in this case for the fairly radical left. And this chancer here that we're seeing on the screen, him not me. I think it never used to be like this. For those of us who've been interested in centre right and right wing politics for the last few years, it's only in the last 2 or 3 years that this rift has occurred. And this is, I think it has to be said, this is about egos as much as anything else. This is about personal dislike and personal hatred, grudges and genders. But the rest of us have to cope with it. Now, people like Ben Habib, and I'm close to Ben, he's a good friend and all of that kind of thing, are saying things like, well, this particular election, by-election, doesn't matter because Restore are the party you need, and Reform will just be the same as all the other. So what they are doing is they are saying, look, it's a long game and we need quite a radical right-wing government. I think the problem with that is this, Kev. I don't think the public are as right-wing as Restore. I don't think they're anywhere near that. I think they're pretty much right where Reform is at the moment, because Reform are looking at all the polls. They're looking at what people are saying, what people are doing. They have a think tank. They employ lots of pollsters, and they know precisely where the British public is. Now, they might move further right as we get nearer towards a general election, but I think they're probably in the right place at the moment. But the thing is, they desperately do not need competition from Rupert and Restore. They really don't need it because the numbers aren't there for them. And as we talked about yesterday, their candidate has been caught tweeting, well, from years ago, but caught tweeting all sorts of nonsense and has been pounced on. So this is going to get very tight. It's going to get very messy and it's going to get very uncomfortable for them. And I'm just really concerned, like you and everybody else, that the left are going to have it as a gift and Andy Burnham's going to get in. And if he does, then he will be the next Prime Minister.
And what we're talking about here, this is the crossroads of Britain's future. If Burnham wins this, and as things stand, because of Rupert Lowe, he will. He goes to Westminster, he defenestrates Starmer, he becomes our most left-wing Prime Minister ever. Yeah. So the future of this country is at stake. Burnham will ruin this country. You think Starmer's made a mess of it. You wait till Burnham gets hold of it. He will ruin this country. Now, what I fear about Makerfield, what's happening up there, with Rupert Lowe insisting on fielding his candidate. He's got every right to do that, by the way, but democracy can be uncomfortable. What I fear is this will become, come the general election, hopefully we don't have to wait until 2029, but we probably will. Come the general election, that what we're seeing in Makerfield will become a microcosm for the macrocosm of the country, that everywhere Lowe will field some candidate that will split the right and Labour candidates, left-wing candidates will achieve power, will get voted in because the right choose to fight and they will be split. So this disunity on the right is going to result in a massive problem for this country generally, I think.
Well, it is, and I think it's going to be massively problematic for the right, as we're seeing that now. The right is characterised by infighting, but it isn't just going to be the Labour Party that is the winner here. It's going to be I think we've talked about this before. It's going to be a coalition of three things: one, red, the Labour Party; two, green, the Green Party; but three, and most worrying, the independents, which are essentially Islamist candidates, and they will gather together, they will coalesce, and they will be a real power base. And what the right is doing is actively, or elements of the right, the elements of the right that are challenging reform at the moment, they are actively allowing and facilitating that. And it really is quite distressing to watch. You know, we're almost there. Reform are massive, and they are kind of, you know, they're making the right noises. Yes, they're making mistakes, but all political parties do. They're far better in terms of governance, in terms of policy, than they were 2 years ago. They are going in the right direction. They are taking the British public with them, but they are not strong enough to withstand the kind of onslaught that they will get from the right, from Rupert, and it is really, really worrying.
It is worrying. Folks, let me know what you think about this. I mean, I guess I'm asking you, would you like Rupert Lowe to withdraw his Restore candidate? Because if he doesn't, Reform UK won't win Makerfield. They'll lose it to Labour. Let me know. 0344 499 1000. Let's go north of the border now, Philip, and talk about Nicola Sturgeon. After her husband, he's still her husband, Peter Murrell, yesterday admitted embezzling £400,000 from the Scottish National Party when his wife was the leader and he was chief executive. His details of his extraordinary spending spree have emerged. He, for example, spent £2,600 on salt and pepper grinders, £3,200 on a coffee machine. He made a £57,500 profit on a Jaguar car. He bought a £120,000 motorhome. He bought a Beatles memorial fountain pen, a £100 designer pencil sharpener, and a £943 oak library ladder, among many other luxury items. She didn't see a thing. The Daily Record newspaper yesterday had their front page of Nicola Sturgeon as Manuel, the way to go. I know nothing. So here's the thing. She says, I didn't know anything of this. And here's her problem. No one believes her. I don't believe her. You don't believe her. No one believes her. You can't have all this stuff coming into your house. She knew what he was earning as CEO of the S&P.
Yeah.
It was 104 grand a year, while she was earning 140 grand a year. Now, 104 grand a year, very nice salary, very nice indeed. But it does not enable you to make this massive amount of purchases and live an extremely expensive designer label lifestyle. And she never questioned this. There are growing calls for her to come clean with the Scottish people. It now emerges, she said, I completely cooperated with the police during the investigation. She was questioned for 10 hours. We now know for 10 hours, to every question, she replied, no comment. So she wasn't transparent. And I think the police ought to have been a little bit more curious about Nicola Sturgeon and what she knew. Instead, they seem to have exonerated her, with her never having answered any of their questions. Thank you very much, the McRozzers.
It's incredible, isn't it? And so it's very rare in your ordinary kind of walk of life that you come across such pure and unadulterated greed. And I was just looking at, as you were listing them there, and I've been reading about them over the last couple of days. Some of the items are just breathtaking.
I know.
But who would think, Kev, right? Who would think, wake up in the morning and think, "God, I need a designer pencil sharpener." Right,
yeah, 100 quid. 100
quid. In my life.
By the way, Philip, he wanted a 100 quid designer pencil sharpener when all he seemed to buy were £285 Mont Blanc fountain pens, including the Beatles Memorial Edition. So what did he need a pencil sharpener for? He had all these pens.
Well, maybe he does a lot of writing, Kev, and he likes to do it in luxury. But there was another thing as well. I mean, he'd bought a telescope that was £1,200.
A Celestron Nexstar 8 SE computerized Schmidt Sessagrain telescope, no less. £1,199.
And you can imagine him coming home with this stuff, you know. oh darling, look at my new pencil sharpener, you know, and look at my Jag, and I've got the mobile home in my mum's garage there. It's all right, everything's okay. Don't worry about it. And she's, you know, and she's completely oblivious to it all. You know, if I came home with all of that kind of stuff, not only would you know, a partner be thinking, my God, where's he getting this stuff from? The neighbours would be looking as well. You know, the neighbours would be thinking, oh, he's got another pencil sharpener there. Oh, you know, he's spending his money. It's incredible, isn't it? But how... It brings up broader questions to me. Why do we get these greedy, horrible pigs always? How do they rise to the top, and how do they get in power? Why do people vote them in? Because it's always the same, isn't it? Corruption.
She ruined Scotland. She ruined Scotland. Yeah. She ruined the SNP. And still maintains that she was a colossus of Scottish politics. She was hopeless, absolutely hopeless. And she's got a story to tell, and she better damn well tell it. She owes it to the people. And by the way, the current boss, chief of the SNP, John Swinney, is taking a very belligerent attitude about it. Because going, well, it wasn't me, it was Peter Murrell. It's his crime, it's his crime. Hey, Swinney, you owe all of those hundreds, thousands of decent, honest Scottish people who donated their hard-earned money to your party and your mission for an independent Scotland. You owe them a massive apology. It's outrageous.
You owe them a massive apology. Again, it's the kind of people that are in charge here, that are at the top of this poisonous party. And it isn't just about greed. It's also hand in hand with bullying and the kind of horrible, poisonous politics that they've peddled over the last decade and a half or so. I think they are part of the problem, you know, in terms of demonising Brexit voters, demonising the people in Scotland who wanted to stay in the Union, all of that kind of stuff. Their kind of politics was appalling. And like all of these people, like all of these greedy hypocrites, they always present themselves as the Be Kind Brigade, and they're anything but. And there's a great big dollop of greed thrown in there as well.
You're absolutely right, Philip. Fantastic to have you on the show. As always, Senior Fellow at the New Culture Forum, Philip Kisley there. Next up, we're sticking with Nicola Sturgeon and her nefarious husband, Peter Murrell. We're going to talk to writer and political commentator Jerry Hassan up there in Scotland. That next, stay tuned.
Child abuse will never go away, and the men in these gangs will do everything in their power to continue to abuse children if they see that the state is not serious about tackling it. And you know, that's the problem. I mean, there's Fiona, you're showing there. You know, she's fought for 20 years. It shouldn't take 20 years to get a council to say we are going to look at, you know, industrial scale rape of children by men who are old enough to be the granddads.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. I'm going to talk to an expert on the Scottish National Party. He wrote a book called The Modern SNP, From Protest to Power. He's writer and political commentator Jerry Hassan. Welcome, Jerry.
Good afternoon.
Look, let me put my cards on the table. I think I'm among the vast majority. That when I hear Nicola Sturgeon say that she had no suspicions, didn't notice anything wrong about her husband Peter Murrell when he was chief executive of the Scottish National Party on this extraordinary spending spree. I mean, really bizarre. I mean, it was almost as if he wanted to get caught, the ludicrous stuff he was buying. You know what we're talking about. £2,600 on salt and pepper grinders, £3,200 coffee machine, £57,500 Jaguar car, £120,000 motorhome, Beatles Memorial fountain pen, £100 designer pencil sharpener, and a £943 oak library ladder, among hundreds and hundreds of other luxury designer label items. She says she had no suspicions, nothing. Well, I don't believe her. Do you?
Well, I'm not certain on this, but I don't believe her. No, I don't believe her. You've got the nature of the party. You've got the vortex of power at the top of the party. When she becomes party leader 2014, he's been chief executive, Peter Murrell, for 13 years. He remains chief executive. There's not hindsight here. Lots of people publicly called for Peter Murrell to step down as chief executive when she becomes party leader. And when she becomes party leader and first minister, it's a Sturgeon-Murrell partnership. It's a partnership that runs the party, and then she runs the government. And it's clear in that who is the top dog, who's calling the shots. It's Nicola Sturgeon. And yes, there's knowing and not knowing. And really, the only defence you can make of her is that, like, she was, completely blindsided, never asked the questions, never asked any curiosity, about all these piles of luxury items trundling into the house. And that, I think, ultimately just beggars belief. There's a trope going on social media that yet again a woman is being blamed for her husband's crimes, but she has an element of complicity here, and she has really. I mean, she made two statements yesterday. As you just said previously, she did not fully cooperate with the police. This is not a story that has ended yet. It may not even end when Peter Murrell faces his sentence. There are questions needing answered by Nicola Sturgeon and by the SNP.
Yeah, let me just, in fairness to her, she's not here to tell her side of the story, so I'm going to read her statement. She put this out yesterday, as you say, Jerry. I want to reiterate that I had no knowledge or personal suspicion whatsoever that items had been purchased using SNP funds. I was cleared of any wrongdoing after a lengthy and thorough investigation in relation to many of the items in question. For example, expensive watches and games consoles. I was not aware of them having been purchased at all. Yeah, but there were hundreds of items, so you know she can't just pick out a couple watches and games consoles and say she didn't know about that. And what she would have known, Jerry, is that you know she was the party leader, he was the party chief executive. She was earning as First Minister £140,000 a year. Yep. She would have known that he was earning £104,000 a year. Now, a very nice income by normal standards, but it's not enough to fund all of these purchases. So she knew about his personal financial circumstances, she knew about his income, she says they had separate bank accounts, but the idea that she wouldn't have said, I couldn't help noticing, Peter, you've got suddenly we've got a £120,000 motorhome in the drive. Oh, no. Now you bought an £81,000 Jaguar. Oh, no. You bought nearly 3,000 quid's worth of salt and pepper shakers. Really, Nicola, she cannot expect us to believe she had no knowledge or suspicion of what was going on.
That's right. And there's a spectrum on this. She might have not been a complicit co-author in this at the beginning, or even through most of it, but not knowing everything as the possessions are piling up just beggars belief. And I mean, there's an element of comedy in this tragedy. Clearly, you know, some of the items, there is an element of hilarity and so on, but it is ultimately very, very serious. You know, a lot of us have had a lot of fun about the camper van and so on, because as people have pointed out, if the SNP needed a camper van in a campaign, they could have just hired one, you know, for a couple of weeks. Maybe he didn't know about such things as hiring camper vans. So the initial explanations have never been sufficed. And this story isn't over. There's questions for SNP headquarters. There's questions for their lack of governance and processes. The people that signed this off in headquarters, lots of them were on six-figure salaries. Several of them have gone on to become MPs, MSPs, etc. Just like blithely walked away from this wreckage. And John Swinney, I thought he took the right tone yesterday. He seemed very, very upset by it, but he was, during the period of this, you know, he was an active participant.
I'll take slight issue with you, Jerry. I thought he was over belligerent and not apologetic enough to the decent, honest Scottish people who gave their hard-earned money to the SNP, presumably in pursuit of Scottish independence. You know, they wrote a very effusive apology that they didn't really get. Let's remind ourselves of John Swinney talking yesterday.
I'm sorry to people who are affected, okay? So I'm quite happy to say that. But my point is that the person responsible for this is Peter Murrell. It's not my conduct that's got to this situation, it's Peter Murrell's. So that's the only point I'm making, but if it helps, I'll say sorry to everyone involved.
Yeah, a bit belligerent that. My view would be, well, John, a properly run party would never let this shambles unfold.
Yes, you're 100% right. I thought before that he showed the fact how upset he was, but your clip is absolutely right. In that point, his apology only comes when he's asked to apologise, and it seems very, very grudging and very, very, conditional. And there's just wider issues here about, when you had such a conflict of interest at the top of the SNP, lack of processes, then you've got a party that's been in office 20 years, will now be, given it's just won elections, 24 years. And I because I've studied the SNP, I don't quite think they have demonised voters, as your previous item said. But what they have done is they have othered how I would frame it, othered and not understood the Scotland that doesn't vote for them. The SNP have never, ever won a majority of the popular vote in Scotland, and they act like they own Scotland sometimes, which is a road to, a road to hell in a way.
Yeah.
And they've also acted, Peter Murrell and Nicola Sturgeon, like they owned the SNP. And there's this sense of arrogance, entitlement, and just thinking you can do what you like, basically.
Yeah, they were like the king and queen of Scotland, weren't they? And did you? I don't know how well you knew Murrell, or if you knew him at all. But if you know him and you know of him and you know about him, is there any way we can explain this bizarre spending spree? Because this isn't normal. Just because you come into £400,000 nefariously, people don't go out and start spending $4,000 on salt and pepper grinders. So there's a suggestion that he was actually a rather lonely man who sat at home on his own all the time, buying stupid stuff with stolen money. Would that be an accurate description?
Well, when he is chief executive of the SNP for 23 years. There's a warning in there, from 2001 to 2023 when he resigns after Nicola Sturgeon. In my knowledge of him in the beginning years, which is when the SNP won in 2007, the first election victory, and then the second big one, 2021, he was a very diligent person, hands-on detail, the proper detail, not the party coffers. And that was a widely held view. And it was thought by most observers that when she becomes First Minister, he could have easily moved on to a small-scale Scottish National Voluntary Organisation at its head. He was thought of as competent, a clean pair of hands. That wouldn't have seemed a complete, placement by the party, and would have looked good for everyone. And at the time, it looked terrible for both of them. We just didn't guess it was so bad. It looked like she was using him as a human shield, but I think maybe she still is in some way. But it reflected very badly on both of them in 2014. But hence, 12 years later, we're in this sad situation.
Last question, Jerry. Really good to have you on. Scottish Police, I think, have got some questions to answer here as well, because she's made great play of the fact I was completely open and transparent and cooperated fully with the investigation. She spent 10 hours being interviewed by police after he was Peter Murrell was arrested and interviewed. So she was interviewed for 10 hours. We now know that she spent those 10 hours saying no comment to every question. At the end of all of this, the police completely exonerated her. Well, how can they exonerate her when she didn't answer any of their questions? I think rather than boasting, as they have been copiously since Murrell confessed to his crime yesterday in court, they've been boasting like a magnificent investigation. It's made him confess in court. Aren't we brilliant? No, not really. We'd like you to ask a few questions of Ms. Sturgeon. Is it unreasonable for a southerner like me to speculate that Police Scotland were daunted, frightened of the First Lady of Scotland?
I think that's probably true. It also took, I know it was complicated, some of the finances, but it took 6 years, £2 million. I mean, at least they got one person, but we all know those police investigations, like, some ongoing at the moment about prominent British people that never lead to clinching anyone. And yes, this story's not over. Nicola Sturgeon's got questions to answer. And SNP headquarters, it's not like, move on, as some SNP supporters are saying. This story's got a lot to unravel. Why, maybe? What was the motives for Peter Murrell? The spending spree, the stealing of party money. And what was the role of Nicola Sturgeon? I think there's lots more still to come.
I totally agree. There's something mysterious about the way he was spending, almost as if he wanted to get caught. And then you have to ask the question, well, why did he want to get caught? Nicola Sturgeon is not out of trouble on this, I don't think, and I don't think it's right that she would be. Questions still to be answered. Great to talk to you, Jerry. Come on again very soon about this. Jerry Hassan there, writer and political commentator, author of The Modern SNP, From Protest to Power. Do you believe Nicola Sturgeon? I don't. Do you? 03444991000. Didn't have any idea, not even the slightest suspicion that something might be a bit up when her husband bought a £120,000 motorhome, £81,000 Jaguar, £2,000, £600 salt and pepper grinders. Never noticed. Oh, you've bought some stairs, some oak stairs for the library, 943 quid. No problem. Come on, Sturgeon. Own up. 0344 499 1000. Next up, we're going to talk about the scourge of child migrants, or rather adult migrants, who pretend they're children. More and more are doing it, and more the authorities choose to believe, people with receding hairlines, beards, broken voices, and as for the men, even worse. We'll talk about that next. Stay tuned.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
I suppose it's only right that when children, migrants, arrive here on small boats on their own, little kids, that they get rather special treatment. They get protected and looked after more than your average migrant. That's quite right. Children are children. The trouble is, the grown-up migrants know this, and lots of them pretend to be children in order to get preferential treatment. They're much more likely to be allowed to stay if they're children on their own, which leads to ludicrous situations with guys, old men with receding hairlines and beards, Adam's apples, very deep voices, claiming to be kids and being accepted as kids. More than half of the under-18s in the care of Kent County Council in 2025 were reassessed and found to be adults. There were 19 kids due to be placed in foster care or children's homes, and testing revealed 10 of them to be adults, fully grown adults. Now, there is a problem because Labour's Borders Act has passed, and that means that illegal immigrants who claim to be children under the age of 18 but refuse to take an age assessment test will have to be believed. That's ridiculous, isn't it? It's absolutely absurd. So this problem continues apace. Let's talk to former head of the UK Border Force, Tony Smith. Yeah, Tony, amongst all the other problems of the migrant crisis, you will have noticed that over this sunny weekend there's been an explosion in the numbers coming across, as we always suspected, while Labour's beginning to crow about, you see, our restrictions, our crackdown is really starting to reduce the migrant crisis. It hasn't. The weather's got good, more than 1,000 since last Friday. So that's going on. Now, more and more of these chancers who turn up here claiming they're escaping from war and torture. Last time I looked, there isn't any war and torture in France. More and more of them are claiming to be children, and they get believed. We should take a hardline approach to grown-up migrants, adult migrants who pretend to be children, but we don't. We tend to wave them through, and we end up with ludicrous situations like 25-year-old adults being school kids in this country. It's mad.
Yeah, you're right, Kevin. This has been a problem for a long time now. The latest guidance that has been published was actually under the 2022 Act, the Nationality and Borders Act, which gave fairly comprehensive instructions to the Border Force about what they need to do when there is a suspected issue about age. As you know, common knowledge, very, very few, if any, of these boat arrivals have got anything on them, a passport or any other identity. And, you know, it's pretty clear that quite a lot of them have been briefed to say they are minors because, as you say, they get preferential treatment. We can't detain them. We hardly ever remove an unaccompanied minor, and they get much more favourable treatment. So you can see what's going on here. The problem is that the Border Force are encouraged by that guidance. And if, you know, people can look it up if they're really interested. It's all online, to actually err on the side of caution. Kevin, and unless it's very, very clear to an officer and a chief immigration officer that the person is clearly over the stipulated age, and even then there is a right of appeal against that decision, to err on the side of caution and either to treat them as minors or more likely to give them a temporary permission on the basis that they are being treated as minors to start off with. And as you say, they are then assessed by people in local services, local authority services under the Merton tests, which follow sometime down the line. And the last government and this government have been very, very cautious, Kevin, about giving us more powers and authorities to say or to deem that they are actually really adults, even though we think they probably are. And the other point to make is that a worse provision, I think, in the Illegal Migration Act to bring in scientific measures that might be used for this. It's been used in other areas, for example, sale of alcohol or access to adult material, some other assessment, biometric facial recognition tests or something like that we could use at the border. But that, as far as I know, hasn't been implemented either. So I'm afraid we are continuing to face this perennial problem, not just of large numbers of undocumented, mainly young men arriving, but many of them claiming to be underage when in fact they're not.
There was a terrible case a year or so ago of a guy, a Serbian migrant, who turned up claiming to be a child and was placed in a school. He was going to school in Bournemouth, got involved in a fracas outside a nightclub and stabbed this young British soldier, to death. And was, of course, arrested. Investigations proved that not only should he have not have been a schoolboy, that he was indeed an adult, and he was wanted for 2 murders in Serbia. So, this kind of accepting of anyone who says, I'm 15, I'm 14, we need to review that, don't we? We need to get tougher, because it's quite clear we're letting too many grown men and grown women, mainly grown men, I suspect, to get away with claiming to be schoolboys. And that way they get to stay, and all sorts of bad things can happen.
Yeah, that is a horrendous case that you refer to, Kevin. I know it well. I use it in case studies at various conferences I go to about risk assessing undocumented arrivals at any border, especially at our border. How do we know how old somebody is? They haven't got any documents. How do we know what they've been up to before they came here? They've changed their names and age and whatever else. There are certain tools that are being looked at, deep dive analytics and access to social media accounts, that sort of thing. But I'm really scared about this, Kevin, very vulnerable to penetration via this route, because we really don't have the capability that I would like to see to detain people for much longer when they first arrive here, and to debrief them more thoroughly than we do. There was a report last year, actually, by Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Fire, Prisons and Police, which said that the Border Force need more time and more resources to hold people, to investigate all of these things. But as you know, Manston, 24 hours or 48 hours is the maximum period, Kevin, that we can hold people. And then we have to grant them temporary admission because there's no prospect of removal. And I'm afraid that's when cases like the one you referred to slip through the net. So it isn't just a matter of immigration and illegal immigration. It is a matter of border security. I'm very, very worried about it. Personally, I would like to see powers given to the Border Force to detain people for much longer than 24 or 48 hours, until such time as we've investigated all of these things. But that's not the framework we have at the moment.
Last question, Tony. Always good to have you on the show. Friday, 394 migrants came across on small boats illegally from France. Saturday, 287. Sunday, 231. Yesterday, a relatively light 77. This is after at least 2 weeks of no crossings at all when the weather was bad. The weather now, of course, is astonishingly hot. The English Channel is like a mill pond. And here they come. If we get a summer of good weather, as Shabana Mahmood feared and predicted a couple of months back, we're going to get a lot of crossings again. She said probably the most ever.
Yeah, so you know as well as I do, as night follows day, that when there's a spell of good weather, we're going to see boats, and that's exactly what's happened over this bank holiday weekend. There has been a quite change in the complexion of this. You know, we're seeing boats launching from much further afield than Calais and Boulogne, which were traditional. That suggests that maybe the French are doing a bit more following their negotiation there that's displacing them to other places. We are seeing bigger boats, more overcrowded boats. Maybe we've done something on the supply chain, but the bottom line is there is still clearly a very significant pool of migrants in France, Belgium, in mainland Europe that want to come here, and they're going to keep coming. And the business model is such that it's so lucrative for people to pop up and offer them passage that they're going to carry on doing it come what may. So I do fear that we will continue to see boat arrivals, and the only way, as I've said to you before, Kevin, that I think this will stop if we change the legislation so that they're not empowered to claim asylum or human rights when they arrive from a safe third country, but they can be detained, and we can find somewhere like Rwanda or somewhere else, if we can't send them back to Europe or to their own country, somewhere where they can live their lives peacefully without getting into the UK. But I don't see that on the immediate political horizon, I'm afraid. So I do fear, yes, I think there will be more boats if the weather carries on like this.
Never stops, does it, Tony? Good to have you on the show as always. Tony Smith, former head of the UK Border Force. Let me know what you think. All these guys, all these adults turning up saying, "Oh, I'm 6, I'm 14. Oh, I'll put you in school." Come on. We ought to be a little bit tougher about all this, don't you think? 03444991000. The Home Office told us in this statement, the safety and well-being of children in care is paramount. We have robust processes to verify and assess an individual's age. We will continue to modernise and strengthen that process in coming months by testing facial age estimation technology. That's from the Home Office. Let's go to break. When we come back, we're going to talk about that case of the 3 young monsters, rapists, who a judge let walk free from court. They're going to have their sentences, their ludicrously lenient sentences, reviewed. So we're getting somewhere on that front. We'll talk about that next.
child abuse will never go away, and the men in these gangs will do everything in their power to continue to abuse children if they see that the state is not serious about tackling it. And you know, that's the problem. I mean, there's Fiona you're showing there. You know, she's fought for 20 years. It shouldn't take 20 years to get a council to say we are going to look at, you know, industrial scale rape of children by men who are old enough to be the granddads.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. The three young teenage rapists who were allowed to walk free from court by a judge called Nicholas Rowland will now have their sentences reviewed. The Attorney General, Lord Hermer, saying there is an epidemic of violence against women and girls in this country, and this government will not hesitate to take action and ensure that all women and girls feel safe and have confidence in the justice system. Well, they won't have confidence in the justice system if the justice system keeps releasing rapists, letting them walk free, letting them avoid jail. Let's talk to criminal defence barrister Quentin Hunt. Hello, Quentin.
Good afternoon.
First of all, the judge, Nicholas Rowland, he's obviously made a terrible decision here. This was an absolutely ludicrous sentence that he handed down while praising these three little monsters, these rapists, saying, oh, you've handled the trial very well and you couldn't possibly have known the meaning of consent. I think they kind of did when they held a knife to their first victim's throat and made her consent. They knew what consent was. So is there any way we can punish Nicholas Rowland or sack him?
It's very hard to remove a sitting circuit judge. It's something that can be done, but it has to be done by Parliament. So it's very hard in practice to do. There's a judicial ombudsman where complaints can be made and judges can be reprimanded, etc. And certainly, I imagine this will have been something of a shot across the bows for him.
Yeah, I mean, that's the sort of nature of my question, really, Quentin. I've been looking into this. It's very hard to even punish judges who make mistakes, let alone sack them. They need to be more accountable, don't they? This is not on they're kind of sitting there in their lofty positions, able to make egregious mistakes with no reprimands whatsoever. That's ridiculous.
I see your point. There's a balance. So we have an independent judiciary. That means that the judiciary can make decisions without political pressure being put upon them for whatever reason. Now, there are pros and cons for that. The pros are obviously that any particular government can't force judges to move in a direction that they want. The cons of it are, as you say, that there is an element of unaccountability, particularly in decisions that seem to lack any basis in common sense.
Yeah, exactly right. Can you bear with me? We're going to play a little bit of our dear leader, the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, talking about this case.
I think it's a really distressing case. I think it's distressing for everybody to hear about. The courage, frankly, of the girls to come forward is humbling, but it is distressing. I find it distressing as a politician. I find it distressing as a father. And there are questions about the sentence. The Attorney General has power to refer a case to the Court of Appeal if the Attorney General thinks that the sentence is too lenient. The Attorney General has now exercised that power, so I can announce that that case now will go to the Court of Appeal, and the Court of Appeal will now review the sentence in that case, and that is clearly the right outcome.
Prime Minister there, I think, speaking for a lot of people. His sidekick, the Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Darren Jones, on the BBC on Sunday, burst into tears about it as a father. I'm not a big fan of Darren Jones, but I was with him on that. How could this judge listen to the evidence? These little thugs held one of their victims at knife point for 90 minutes. 90 terrifying minutes. They're victim statements made you weep. One of them said, you know, I don't want to live anymore. I don't care if I live anymore. They've had a life sentence. How can this judge listen to all of that and then let these 3 guys who did it walk free? What's going on in his mind?
It's hard to say. I haven't any more access to the details of the case than anyone else, and having read into it, and this is just a personal opinion of mine, it beggars belief that he's come to that decision. But it's one of those things where he sat through the whole trial, he heard mitigation, and he came to his decision. And I suppose only he knows what was going through his mind when he made that decision.
Well, I think in the real world, you know, if he was in any normal profession, he would be getting one hell of a telling off at the very least. And I think we need a mechanism to bring some of our judges into line. Just a last question to you, Quentin. Thanks for coming on. But apparently over the past 3 years, the number of rapists, people found guilty or admitting to rape, being spared jail has rocketed by 2/3. That more and more defendants who either admit to or are found guilty of rape are walking free from court. I mean, shouldn't rape essentially, except for very, very exceptional circumstances, shouldn't it be treated like murder? You know, it's just about the worst crime you can commit apart from murder. Shouldn't a prison sentence be automatic?
I mean, there's a strong argument for that. It's not automatic in law yet, but there's no reason why Parliament couldn't pass a law to that effect. I have a problem with an aspect of the criminal justice system, that being that the system's been underfunded by governments historically, and that's meant that prisons have got overcrowded. So there's been pressure on judges to pass more lenient sentences that mean that people will often escape prison in circumstances where you'd think that they should. The trouble is that hasn't been properly, in my view, hasn't been properly applied, in that the most serious cases, of course, as you say, it should be an almost automatic presumption that people will go to prison for the horrific things that they've done. And really the focus should be, in my view, if prisons are overcrowded and people are not going to go to prison, look at the cases where there is the least amount of public harm when you're doing that. And I'm not sure that's always being applied.
Certainly not. Well, listen, Quentin, really good to have you on the show. Perhaps when they review the sentence, we'll find out what they actually end up with, and you can come back on. We'll talk about that. But good to have you on the show. Thank you for coming on. Quentin Hunt there, criminal defence barrister. Don't you think, though, let me know what you think, 03444 991000. I mean, I've been looking into this, and you think, well, you know, if you or I make that judge, Nicholas Rowland, has made the most horrendous mistake. What he's done is wrong. It's flat out wrong. Everybody knows that. He has made the most egregious error. And we don't really have any mechanism as a nation to punish him or sack him. I'd sack him for this. Certainly I'd punish him, suspend him or something. No pay. Don't you think we, the people of this country, need a mechanism to bring our judiciary into line? They work for us, not themselves. Don't you think? 0344 499 1000. When we come back, I'll be joined by political commentator, former independent mayor of Middlesbrough, Andy Preston, to go through the big stories of the day. See you in a minute.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. It's been more than a decade since Baroness Louise Casey published her report into child sex abuse. She now feels that she has failed grooming gang victims. She's taking a lot on herself. It's not really her fault, but since she published her report, nothing has changed, as she points out, and that kids are still being raped, tortured, drugged. It's still going on, and victims are still not believed. Baroness Casey says, "I feel I have failed the victims of the grooming gangs." We'll talk about that in a little while. Why is it that we're still so slow to react to reports of child sex abuse? Why aren't victims listened to? Why have we got nowhere in 10 years? Why was the Labour Party so keen not to have a public inquiry into the rape gang scandal? Got to take this stuff seriously, don't you think? We don't. We still don't as a nation. We don't take child sex abuse seriously, and I think we should, don't you? 03444991000. We'll talk about that in about 20 minutes. First, let's go through some of the big stories of the day with political commentator, former independent mayor of Middlesbrough, Andy Preston. Hi, Andy.
Hi, Kevin.
Now, first up, I've just been talking about these three monsters who raped those poor little girls, 14 and 15-year-old girls. Two ordeals, one of them 90 minutes at knife point. The judge said to the perpetrators, to the rapists, "Oh, you know, you couldn't understand the meaning of consent." I think they probably could, because they had a knife to the girl's throat, making her consent to them raping her. So that's nonsense. This judge let these three monsters walk free. Now, if we're going to have stupid judges like this, two questions really. We'll broach the second question in a little while. The second question is, we need a mechanism to punish judges, to sack them, to suspend them, to inform them as a society that you have just made a terrible mistake. You should not have let those three little thugs walk free. But my question to you, because of this case, the sentence is now being reviewed. So the leniency of the sentence is under review. Hopefully it will be toughened up. But there are now calls to make incarceration, a jail term, mandatory for rape. If we're going to have judges like Nicholas Rowland who are going to let rapists walk free, if we're going to have a situation like we've had for the past 3 years with more and more convicted rapists or people who admitted to rape have walked free without going to jail, then I think we need to change the law. We have to make prison mandatory for the offence of rape. Would you agree?
Dangerous people should be locked up, Kevin. There is no doubt about that. If you are, regardless of your age, whether you are 14 or 89, if you are a threat, a danger, a risk to the safety or the life of other people, you need taken off the streets. And you know what? This case reminds me a little bit, because of the ages of the people involved, it reminds me a little bit of the horrendous thing that happened in Merseyside all those years ago. James Bulger, do you remember that? Venables and Thompson were the perpetrators. They were young. They were sent to a Young Offenders Institute. I think that Thompson was released somewhat later, maybe 10 or 15 years later, and has kept a low profile, no reoffending. But Venables is still in prison, having been released and being found guilty of crimes from affray to possessing child pornography after he had killed and abused a toddler, abducting him, from a shopping centre away from his mother. It was a disgusting crime. And this reminds me of that. And it's a reminder, Kevin, that we cannot leave people on the streets. We cannot do it. And the idea that these people are, these kids, 13, 14, probably 16, 17 now, that they are allowed to just wander free and crack on, perhaps do a bit of community service, is preposterous. It's infuriated politicians. It must deeply, deeply hurt the victims and their families. And what message does it send to others? That you can hold someone at knife point? I'm sorry if I'm being a bit too emotional about this, but this is insane. Society needs to feel that there's justice. This isn't justice.
What about punishing judges? This is a guy called Nicholas Rowland. He actually praised these three rapists about the way they'd handle themselves in the trial. Your behaviour's been exemplary. He also said, oh, you're too young to know the meaning of consent. Rubbish. Rubbish. They knew the meaning of consent, which is why they got a knife to the neck of their victim to make her consent. Now, this guy, Rowland, has made an egregious mistake. In all professions, in most professions, if you make an egregious professional mistake, you are punished, maybe even sacked. We have no real mechanism to even reprimand Nicholas Rowland, and that is a situation that needs to change. Judges work for the people. The people should have the means to punish judges if they do wrong, don't you think?
I think we should. I think that the difficulty for me saying too much at this point is that judges are aware of more information than we see. However, it's a massive how possible to believe that this isn't an act of grotesque stupidity and recklessness by a judge that means that punishment feels like it is the only thing. I'd love to see all the detail, how on earth he came to this conclusion. Rightly, it's going to the Court of Appeal, quite rightly. And let's just hope that we incarcerate anyone who is a physical threat of your life, your safety, your sexual freedom. Anyone who is a threat to that, regardless of their age, has to be locked up, Kevin.
I agree. I just think that given that the curse of the liberal left-wing judge is becoming more and more prevalent, and they're releasing, not imprisoning more and more rapists, then if they're so stupid as to let rapists walk the streets, then we'll have to make them imprison rapists, like they have to imprison murderers. We'll have to do that if they're going to be this stupid. Mainly, I just think we should be able to punish Rowland. Judges should know if they screw up, the people will come for them and they will punish them. They work for us, not the other way round. This is all wrong. Yeah. Let me ask you about Nicola Sturgeon, if I may, Andy. She says she had no knowledge or suspicion of what was going on when her husband, when she was leader of the SNP, she was Scotland's First Minister, and he was Chief Executive of the Scottish National Party. He was earning £104,000 a year, and yet suddenly started turning up at their marital home, you know, with a kind of cornucopia of bizarre designer items. £2,600 salt and pepper grinders, £3,200 coffee machine, £57,500 Jaguar, 120 grand motorhome, a Beatles memorial fountain pen, £100 designer pencil sharpener, and so on and so forth. She says she has no knowledge, had no suspicion. Well, I don't believe her, and nor do many other people. She's still got questions to answer, hasn't she?
She has questions to answer in a massive way. Look, first of all, it is him who's committed the crime. It's a husband or ex-husband who has clearly committed the crime.
He's still technically her husband. They're not actually divorced, but they're in the process.
But Kevin, it's unfathomable. It's unfathomable that she did not have an inkling that something was odd. You know, perhaps for a little while, a few weeks, a few months, someone's spending a bit more. You think that, I don't know, they're just being a bit more generous or a bit less frugal. But as you said, a motorhome, £120,000. What was that salt and pepper pot? How much was that salt and pepper?
It was 2,000. Hang on, let me just get this right. £2,300.
I'll bet Donald Trump's never spent that much on a salt and pepper pot.
No, I got that wrong. It's £2,600.
Oh, 2,000, even worse.
I think they're Lalique, which is a French designer, glassware designer, holds its value very well.
Kevin, that's got all the hallmarks of someone with way too much money, or someone who's trying to spend it quickly because it's going to disappear, like Brewster's Millions, that movie. And when he's doing things like that, she must have said, "Oh, that's a beautiful salt and pepper pot. Where did you get it from? How much would it cost?" She must have Googled it. It's unfathomable that she did not have some sense that there was something off, that there was a rabbit off, and I hope she stands up. And I listened to some senior SNP politicians talking this morning. They're very angry because her inaction on this, the fact she's going to have to face questions, is tainting the whole party now and impacting their popularity in Scotland. So this is a really serious issue, and she's going to have to face questions, and it's unfathomable that she did not in some way have an inkling that there was a major issue.
I mean, for example, when she was still First Minister, he travelled with her on some kind of official tour. They went to the Isle of Skye, was it? The Shetlands. Went to the Shetland Islands. He went into a local jeweller's and he bought her this pendant thing, this gold pendant for 425 quid, which she was often seen wearing. There are loads of pictures. It's got a sort of pictorial design of a kind of storm, Scottish storm going on. Anyway, they went to this store. He just sort of quickly bought her a 425 gold pendant. Now, she knew what he was earning. He was earning £104,000 a year. They didn't have joint bank accounts, apparently, so it's all his money. She knew he couldn't afford to live like this. Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong, £104,000, very nice salary. But that does not make you as rich as Croesus. That doesn't make you a millionaire. He was behaving like a millionaire. She must have had suspicions.
Kevin, you pointed out quite rightly, £104,000 is a lot of money, but to spell it out for people after tax, you would take home about £60,000. Still a lot of money, but once you've paid for a mortgage or rent, you've maintained your car, you've insured it, you've upgraded it now and then, you buy clothes, you go on holiday. There isn't actually, if you live a nice life, not a flashy life, but a nice life, there isn't that much left. £104,000 gross, 60 grand after tax, will not buy you a motorhome. It will not pay for the holidays. It will not pay for £2,600 worth of salt and pepper pots. It is unbelievable, and I use that word in quote marks, but I think it's unbelievable that she did not have an inkling there was something very wrong.
Yeah, I think her problem is nobody believes her. She said she fully cooperated with the police investigation. She was interviewed for 10 hours after her husband was interviewed, and apparently we now learn that to every question she answered no comment. I wouldn't call that particularly transparent. And also, I suggest that the Scottish police were being a little bit gullible there in believing that she had... If she didn't answer any questions, my suspicion would be, what did she know? Instead, they just completely exonerated her. I'll tell you what I think was going on, Andy. At the time, she was the Queen of Scotland. They were the King and Queen of Scotland, and the police were frightened of her. They were frightened of her power. That's what I think.
I think it's very hard, Kevin, for the police. You know what? If someone isn't directly connected, i.e. they're not the ones spending the money, they've got separate bank accounts, and she just says no comment, it's not that they exonerated her. Well, not in my eyes. I think they maybe just thought, we haven't got any evidence. We cannot prove realistically that she actively knew this, even though at an everyday level, of course she knew. But it couldn't be proven in a court of law. So I would take the police's side on this, and I would back them. But I think it's heinous. I think it's horrible. And they say that all political careers end in failure. And you know what? She was pretty popular in Scotland. There was a lot of, sometimes begrudging, but a lot of respect for Nicola Sturgeon. And I'm sure that's now evaporated, and she will go down in history as something of a wrong-un.
Well, she ruined Scotland, screwed up independence, and ruined the Scottish National Party too. So that's an excellent hat-trick on the Queen of Nicola Sturgeon's part. What about Makerfield? What are you making of this fight on the right? I mean, the fact of the matter is because Rupert Lowe insists on fielding a candidate who will get 7,000 or 8,000 votes, that'll win it for Andy Burnham. It's as simple as that. If Rupert Lowe and Restore Britain stay in the campaign, Reform UK will be beaten by Andy Burnham because of the split vote on the right. Your thoughts?
It will split it, absolutely. Just as, for example, having a Lib Dem and a Green candidate, harms Labour's chances somewhat. It all comes, whether Rupert Lowe should stand down depends on his priorities, doesn't it? If his priority is to make sure that Labour are pushed backward and fought from all sides, then he should stand down. if his goal is to actually raise Restore's profile, to get one over on Nigel Farage, or a combination of those things, if that's his priority, then he should make sure that somebody stands. I suspect this is driven by a grudge, a feud between he and Farage.
That's what it is. That's what it is. And because of this feud, it means Burnham will probably win Makerfield, waltz down to Westminster, defenestrate Starmer, and we'll end up with the most left-wing Prime Minister we've ever had. So thank you very much, Rupert Lowe.
Yeah, I mean, it's not too late. I mean, has the by-election date been set yet? Is it still not quite been called? I'm not sure.
It's the 18th of June. They've just called it.
Oh, right, okay. So that's pretty soon, actually. Is that 3 weeks? Maybe just over
4
3
weeks,
weeks.
wouldn't it? 4 weeks, yeah. Maybe.
Okay, 4 weeks. So, I mean, there is time for Rupert Lowe's candidate to stand down, to withdraw. That's still doable. Maybe he does that. Maybe that actually will be good PR for Restore and Rupert Lowe. When I see Rupert Lowe, and I see on X, Twitter, I see Elon Musk actively backing him and them, and I wonder what's afoot there. Is this something that will fizzle out, or is Musk going to somehow find a way to throw millions upon millions at Restore, which would boost Rupert Lowe's credibility and the party's credibility, but horrendously hinder reform? So it's going to be really interesting, and it might be the case that Elon Musk holds the key here.
Indeed, yeah. Musk is said to be funding Restore Britain to quite an extent. So, yeah, Elon Musk backing of Rupert Lowe is a significant factor in this. Interesting times. Let me get you a quick comment from you on this. Social media is as dangerous as smoking for children. The Prime Minister wants to ban social media for under 18, so does West Streeting. They all want to ban it. You know what socialists are like? They love to ban things. Oh, here's the chance for a new rule, a new regulation, a new law to bring in. Let's ban children from social media. Keir Starmer, just before I lose the premiership, that will be my legacy. I banned something. It won't be your legacy, Keir, because your ban won't work. Children will get round it, just like they're getting round it in Australia. So what exactly is all this about? Shouldn't social media, whether or not kids use social media, should be up to their parents, not mother government?
I disagree with you on that one, Kevin. I think that social media is harmful other than in moderation. I think it causes all sorts of anxiety, unfair comparisons between yourself and others. The algorithm sends you all kinds of horrendous stuff. And if you have suicidal thoughts and tendencies, you can be then bombarded with messages that actively encourage you to look into it and even consider it. It's horrendous, some of the stuff that goes on. Now, of course, we want freedom. Of course we do. We want freedom to smoke, right? You know, if I want to smoke, I'll go and buy a packet of cigarettes. But that doesn't mean that kids should be allowed to go and buy cigarettes. So we protect kids, Kevin. So under 18, you're not allowed to smoke. You're not allowed to borrow money. You're not allowed to serve in active combat. You need to be 17 to learn to drive. So why would we let 12, 13, 14-year-olds have access to social media?
I'll tell you why we need more lateral thinking about this. It's because I take your point, but you ban 12 and 13-year-olds from social media. Good luck with that. They'll get round your ban, just as they are in Australia. So this is just performative stuff by Starmer and the gang. Say, oh, look, we're the ones who banned the scourge of social media from children, except children will still get it.
I agree that some kids, in fact, many kids will
all kids, they all know how to do it.
Well, you know what, Kevin? I think that parents, as a parent of boys who are now, 21 and 18, well, they're men, I guess, not boys, but they grew up in the worst possible time. They grew up just when social media was out there and we didn't know the dangers of it, and hopefully they're fine anyway. But we should have been stricter on social media, but everybody else seemed to be doing it, so we thought it was okay. In actual fact, as a parent, you know, if the government stands up and says this is now illegal, it is not allowed, it's outlawed, parents will be stricter and they will police their kids better. So I would welcome this. I think over time, if we learn more and we find smarter ways to do it, let's adapt the law, but let's stop messing around as a country and let's pass a law that does something and tinker with it later instead of trying to finesse it.
Okay, I'll tell you what, Andy, we're going to agree to disagree on this one. I usually agree with you, but I'm not with you on this. If it's a new law, I say no. I'm just sick of all these laws. Labour, here's a law, diktat, regulation, rule. Honestly, leave us alone. We can make our own decisions. Andy, good to talk to you as always. Andy Preston, their political commentator, former independent mayor of Middlesbrough. Where do you stand? Are you with me? That banning social media is for parents, not the government, and it won't work. What's the point? Let me know what you think. You may disagree with me like Andy did. 0344 499 1000. When we come back, we'll be talking about Baroness Louise Casey, who brought out a brilliant report in 2015, more than a decade later. She says she feels like she has let down the victims of the rape gang scandal. We'll talk about that next.
If your other half came home with £125,000 worth of motorhome, wouldn't you go, darling, where did you get that from? Yeah. Have that turned up on the driveway? Where did you get the motorhome from? It's a very expensive motorhome. £81,000 Jaguar, Volkswagen Golf, partly funded with stolen cash, luxury watches over 9,000 quid, Mont Blanc pens, a £3,232 coffee machine. What was the man doing?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. In 2015, Baroness Louise Casey published her report into child sex abuse, rape gang activity, etc. More than a decade on, she feels like she has, she says she feels like she has failed the victims of rape gangs, because she said the rape gang scandal continues apace, and the victims of rape gangs are still not listened to. In other words, more than 10 years after her report, not much has changed. Let's talk to Conservative MP at Keighley and Ilkley. He's campaigned for an inquiry into the grooming gang case since 2019. He is the MP, Robbie Moore. Welcome, Robbie.
Yeah, hi there.
What's your feeling about what Baroness Casey has said? I mean, she's being pretty hard on herself, to be fair. She produced this report, this iconic report in 2015, and what she's saying is that she highlighted the problem of rape gangs. She highlighted the scourge of child sex abuse, the abuse of young people sexually. Generally, she highlighted all that, called for change, and she says more than a decade on nothing much has changed. The rape gang scandal continues. Rape gang activity is still happening, and victims, she says, are still not believed. Why in more than 10 years have we not learned lessons from Baroness Casey's excellent report, Robbie?
Well, I have a huge amount of respect for Baroness Casey, not only the work that she did 10 years ago, but in the recent review that she produced in 2024 that recommended that we have that national grooming gangs inquiry that is finally, slowly being implemented. But I take the view that it's fine for these reports to be produced, but you need government to act on it. And therefore, I do feel that Baroness Casey, having produced very detailed reports previously, and more recently in 2024, is shining a spotlight on what needs to be done, but unfortunately we've not had government at a national level or indeed at a local level enact on the recommendations that she has rightly called for, and that's why it is right that we're having this national grooming gangs inquiry. I get constantly frustrated at the slowness in that it's rolling out, but it is right that we're having it, and I hope that it focuses on areas like the Bradford district, like Keighley, where I am the Member of Parliament for, so that we can absolutely get to grips on this issue, install trust back in those victims and survivors that have been failed by the state for far too long, and ultimately see convictions follow and hold those to account that have failed those victims and survivors for far too long.
I'm looking today, Robbie, at the Prime Minister and his Attorney General, Richard Hermer, waxing lyrical about the horror of sexual misconduct around women, which safeguarding issues surrounding women, and the government won't put up with it. Why do you think then, as a government that's so concerned about women's safety and rape issues, why were they so reticent, so slow to call a public inquiry, a national public inquiry into the scourge of the rape gang scandal? Why were they so reluctant to do it? I think this is a real stain on this government's track record.
Well, I don't know why, but it is absolutely a stain on this government's track record. This is probably the biggest national scandal that has haunted communities like I represent in West Yorkshire, but indeed across the whole country for far, far too long. And the reality of it is, even when this government came in, we had the previous Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, stand at the dispatch box in January of 24 saying that there would be 5 local inquiries, and referenced Oldham would be one of those. Here we are in May of 26, and there has been no further progress other than a national inquiry being announced, Oldham still being part of it. We have an independent chair, but we don't know what local areas will be further focused on, and we don't know how this will roll out because we're still waiting for further announcements to be made. So, you know, it worries me immensely that here you have all levels of the state, be it national government and local government, that have failed those victims and survivors for far too long. And it takes those victims, those survivors, to continuously keep putting pressure on the government and those members of Parliament that want it to see happen, to make sure that it gets done. And I cannot understand for the life of me why on earth it takes so long to get any traction on something like this that has haunted our communities, our country, for far, far too long.
Do you know, Robbie, when it's supposed to start? Is there any start date?
Yeah, well, look, the latest is that the independent chair, Baroness Longfield, will announce the first tranche of local inquiries that sit underneath the umbrella of the national inquiry by no later than the 13th of July. I sit on the Home Affairs Select Committee. We had Baroness Longfield in front of us just about 10 days ago, and she confirmed that that will be the case when the first tranche happens. We know that Oldham will be part of that because that was mandated to be done done so over 18 months ago by the government. But I only hope that the Bradford district, as I continuously will keep campaigning for, is included as part of that first tranche. I feel that the independent chair has enough evidence to announce that today, and my fear is that the scale of the issue across the Bradford district will dwarf that of the likes of Oldham, Rochdale, Telford, where independent inquiries have previously taken place.
Now, this public inquiry convened what they call a victims panel. They got some of the poor young girls who were actually the victims of these rape gangs, drugged, tortured, raped by predominantly gangs made up of Muslim men of Pakistani heritage. Of the victims panel, at least 3 swiftly quit. One of them has become a bit of a friend of mine, Ellie Reynolds. She was a victim up in Barrow-in-Furness. I said, why did the 3 of you quit this victims panel? She said, because it was the same old story. They were patronising us. They wouldn't listen to us. They treated us like second-class citizens. So this inquiry, hopefully it'll sort itself out, but it seems to suffer from the same problems that the authorities suffered from throughout the actual height of the rape gang scandal as it was unfolding, which was nobody ever listened to these girls, and when they did, they didn't really care because they were from the wrong side of town. They came from sink estates. That in itself isn't true. My friend Ellie comes from an extremely happy normal family, so it's wrong to say that all the victims were just sort of drug-addled sink estate kids. That's not true. But Ellie says that 3 of them quit because they weren't being listened to and they were still being patronised. Why can't we change our attitude to these people?
Well, it's deeply worrying if victims and survivors don't feel that they're being listened to when the terms of reference are being formed or throughout the whole of the process, because ultimately this is why the inquiry is happening, to make sure that victims and survivors get the justice that they rightly deserve, that they ultimately are able to trust those very organisations that have failed them for far too long, all of those organisations that have safeguarding responsibility, whether it's the local authorities, the police, healthcare organisations, child homes, etc. So it is worrying to hear that, but I do hope that Baroness Longfield and her 2 individuals that are helping her carry out this inquiry recognise that trust has to be reinstalled, because ultimately if there is no trust within this process, it has failed from the start. And I would urge anyone that still feels that they don't have that level of trust within the process, that they are reaching out to those of us that sit on the Home Affairs Select Committee and others, so we can hold this whole process to account to really make sure that it does what it is being instructed to do, which is for the benefit of those victims and survivors throughout.
Robbie Moore, MP for Keighley and Ilkley. Keep up the good work. Very good to talk to you. Thank you so much. Next up, folks, we're going to talk to the political editor at The Sun, Jack Elsom, about this furious feud between Nigel Farage and Rupert Lowe, Restore Britain, which frankly is reducing the chances of Reform UK beating Andy Burnham very significantly, very significantly. We'll talk to Jack about whether or not this feud can be resolved, whether or not the fight on the right will seal the fate of Andy Burnham and indeed Reform UK's candidate Rob Kenyon. We'll talk about that next. Stay tuned.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Will Rupert Lowe's ego trip, will Rupert Lowe's ego define the fate of this nation? It looks likely, because if he doesn't get rid of his candidate, Rebecca Shepherd, I think her name is, up in Makerfield, she'll get 7,000 or 8,000 votes. That will tip the scales in the favour of Andy Burnham. So in other words, the Restore Britain candidate, although she won't get many votes, 7,000 or 8,000 max, she will probably ensure a Labour victory. Andy Burnham will win. He will waltz down to Westminster, defenestrate Keir Starmer and become our most left-wing Labour MP ever. And it's all down potentially to this feud between Restore Britain's Rupert Lowe and his former boss at Reform UK, Nigel Farage. Let's talk to the political editor at The Sun, Jack Elsom. Jack, you just listened to that. Would that be a fair assessment? Or we've got this kind of clash of egos, Rupert Lowe and Nigel Farage. Rupert Lowe is insisting on fielding a candidate. That candidate, Rebecca Shepherd, will probably make all the difference up there and tip the scales in favour of Andy Burnham, and the rest will be history. So is the fate of this country, and it's not an exaggeration to put it in that way, in the hands of this kind of egotistical feud between Rupert Lowe and Nigel Farage?
Kev, I think you're spot on. It's probably the weirdest and most consequential butterfly effect in political history. You know, who would have thought that when Lee Anderson kicked Rupert Lowe out of Reform last year, it would have set off a chain of events which could lead to Andy Burnham coming back and leading a hard left Labour government. But that is the prospect which we're now staring down the barrel of. I've spoken to people who have been on the doorsteps in Makerfield. I'm going to go, I think, next week, but I haven't had time to get up there myself. And they say that actually the Restore presence is real. Speaking to people in Andy Burnham's camp, they are privately absolutely delighted of this fracturing on the right of British politics, but especially in Makerfield, which looks like Andy Burnham could come up the middle and waltz back to Westminster, challenge Keir Starmer for the Downing Street crown and become Prime Minister. And there are two schools of thought, I think. One, clearly this poll has really put the jitters on Reform, because it shows that Rupert Lowe could deprive them of victory. I think at the moment, Andy Burnham's on about 43%, Labour on 40%, Rupert Lowe on 7%. So clearly he is skimming enough votes off the right to deprive Reform of that victory. But there is another school of thought, which is actually, would those Restore Britain voters vote for Nigel Farage if he wasn't there? Because what people in his team say, and what Labour people are hearing on the doorstep, is that they regard Nigel Farage as some kind of sellout and wouldn't vote for him anyway, regardless of whether Rupert Lowe was standing a candidate or not. Now, I don't really buy that, if I'm honest. I think that the parties are just such kindred spirits. Clearly, Rupert Lowe is wanting to, he says, deport more people. He accuses Nigel Farage of going soft on immigration, not something which I'm sure many people in this country would accuse Reform of. But clearly, you know, there is a split there. And at the moment, it looks like Andy Burnham is going to be the one laughing all the way to the ballot box because of it.
So that, what I think Makerfield is going to turn out to be, I mean, we don't know what's going to happen. Maybe Rupert Lowe will withdraw from the contest, although I think that's unlikely. But if he stays there, I think that probably will usher Andy Burnham into Westminster. He'll win that by-election. But in your view, Jack, will Makerfield become a kind of microcosm of the entire country as we head towards the general election, with the fight on the right continuing and the big split between Restore, there's even Advanced UK with Ben Habib, of course the Tories, Reform, that the right will be so split that it will let the left get in. Do you think that's what might happen as we go towards the general election?
Yeah, well, this is the danger. I can't see any constituency across the country where Restore Britain would gain a single MP on current polling. Not even in Great Yarmouth, which is sort of like their sort of, I guess, their bastion and their stronghold.
A spiritual home.
Yes, exactly. It's where Rupert Lowe is an MP, and clearly they won those councillors a couple of weeks ago. But on current trajectories, you can't see him winning any seat at the general election if one was held tomorrow, but you could see him depriving Nigel Farage of a few key seats. That is definitely a real possibility under our first past the post system. Clearly, Rupert Lowe has done incredibly well in terms of what we in Westminster call the air war, in terms of getting lots of traction, maybe not in mainstream media as such, but in social media. You look at his tweets to support of Elon Musk, you look at his Facebook posts, and they are getting millions and millions of views. Where I worry with Rupert Lowe is really trying to take that next step from being a good social media powerhouse to having a ground campaign where you have data, you have candidates, you have canvassers, which is a big part still in this country of political campaigning, where you go knocking on doors, you collect data. It's still a big part of political strategy. Now, Reform have really, over the past 2 years or so, put in the legwork to build those local branches and build up that campaigning intelligence. Does Rupert Lowe have what it takes to compete with the big boys in the political campaigning sphere? That is a question which he'll have to prove over the next few years towards a general election. But currently what it looks like is that we have Reform, Labour fighting it out in those Leave voting seats in the north. Rupert Lowe not really at the races in terms of competing to win those seats, but yes, he could do some serious damage to Nigel Farage, especially in Makerfield. I mean, like, if you look at the Greens, for example, who have been skimming votes off Labour in other parts of the country, they're not really at the races here. And so it is the fracturing of the right which is going to do damage to Nigel Farage. Clearly, there are calls to unite the right. From where I'm standing, it does not look like that there's going to be any thawing of relations between Nigel Farage and Rupert Lowe. The two men clearly loathe each other. There's so much water under the bridge with those two that I don't think there's going to be any chance of a sort of rapprochement between them in the coming years, I'd say.
Yeah, it does look pretty intractable, that dispute. Meanwhile, what are you hearing about Reform? I'm hearing it increasingly. Let me ask you this first of all. Is there Rob Kenyon, the Reform UK's candidate, his past record with social media, there's a few posts that are, shall we say, questionable. He liked a post about Carol Vorderman, which wasn't at all nice. He also said women can't drive, and he also said that women use abortions as a way to have sex with anybody they feel like. Well, all of this is not great. Do you think that will affect his chances, his various tweeting errors, if you like? And why didn't Reform UK spot this before they let him become their candidate?
You're right. It's just totally bizarre. And it also goes to show that Reform have serious work to do in terms of the vetting of their candidates. All political parties have problems with candidates, but this is a crunch by-election where they have chance to inflict serious damage on the Labour Party in a overtly winnable seat. And what they haven't done seems to be any due diligence in terms of the background. Nigel Farage likes to say that they have totally overhauled their vetting system to the fact where it's now almost watertight. But all it took was a few left-wing campaigners to scroll through some past social media posts and found a whole treasure trove of pretty ghastly comments from Robert Kenyon. And their strategy seems to be sort of never complain, never explain. Let's just hope that it all goes away. Saying that it was made in jest or made in private, even though it was all in the public sphere. And Danny Kruger yesterday, when he was on the airwaves, seemed really uncomfortable having to defend those comments. And that's going to be the issue now, is that they're going to have to go out again to the media and defend what they know to be the indefensible. And for Robert Kenyon, yes, he's got lots of good qualities, qualities which would, in any other world, make him a formidable candidate. He worked for the NHS, former Army reservist, plumber, lived in the area all of his life, but he has been undone by what he's said in the past. And, you know, in politics these days, what you say in the past will come back to bite you, and it'll be in the full glare of the public spotlight. And Reform should know that, and Reform should probably get their vetting a bit more tight.
Yeah, that's my point. I mean, I've got some sympathy with the argument. You know, you can't blame everybody for everything they've ever written on social media. We've all written some stupid things from time to time. I've got some sympathy with that line of argument, but which makes it all the more important that Reform UK should have checked him properly, because you know that whilst you and I and Danny Kruger and Nigel Farage can agree, you know, this was just pub banter, shouldn't be taken too seriously, the electorate do tend to take this kind of thing seriously. And Reform UK, if I was running that party, I'd have been through everything he ever posted with a fine tooth comb, like I would every candidate, because this kind of stuff comes back to bite you and haunt you.
Yeah, and do you remember in the last election where a load of their candidates turned out to have pretty unsavoury pasts? And Richard Tice and Nigel Farage said that they were going to sue the vetting company responsible for carrying out that vetting, because they said that it was definitely not up to scratch. We didn't then hear much about that lawsuit. I don't think it went anywhere. But then what we heard in subsequent press conferences was that they were going to totally ramp up their vetting operation to the point where it would be almost watertight. Now, clearly, no vetting operation can totally eradicate any sort of wrong, but it would be to a really high standard. And I'm surprised that when they just had this one by-election to focus on, a by-election which is going to be probably the most consequential in British political history, given the nature of its ramifications for the leadership of Number 10, I just would have thought they would have put much more effort into doing this. Now, Reform have the resources to do this. You know, they've got loads of money coming in. They've got this grand office in Millbank where it's incredibly professional in terms of the outfit. You know, Nigel Farage has got his own sort of private office, and it's a really sort of like quite slick setup. But the fact that they've let another person's like this sort of slip through the net, yes, they can sort of laugh it off and be, oh, it's sort of locker room talk, pub banter, in the way that Nigel can get away with, in the way that Donald Trump can get away with. When it's someone like Robert Kenyon, who is not known to the public, he seems to be shying away from doing media interviews throughout this campaign so far. That's when I think the danger of people sort of scratching their chin and going, is this guy who we want representing us now? Maybe the people make a film will say, yes, he is. You know, we stand by him, and it's locker room talk, and we don't care, which is fine. But why take the risk? And I think that's what Nigel Farage probably is kicking himself about.
Yeah, I don't think he'll be doing cartwheels about all of this. I totally agree. Jack, fantastic to talk to you. Thank you so much for your time. That's the brilliant political editor at The Sun newspaper, Jack Elsom. I should read you now, because we're in those rules, Purdah rules about this by-election. So every time we mention it, I have to read out every single candidate. So these are this is the current Makerfield candidates list for that by-election. Jake Austin, Liberal Democrats; Andy Burnham, the Labour Party; Dan Clark, the Libertarian Party; Alan Howling, Lord Hope, the official monster raving loony party; Robert Kenyon, Reform UK; Rebecca Shepherd, Restore Britain; Sarah Wakefield, Green Party; Peter Ward, Rejoin EU; and Michael Winstanley, the Conservative Party. And on that bombshell, let's go to break. Sun Sport next. Stick around.
If your other half came home with £125,000 worth of motorhome, wouldn't you go, darling, where did you get that from? Yeah. Have that turned up on the driveway? Where did you get the motorhome from? It's a very expensive motorhome. £81,000 Jaguar, Volkswagen Golf, partly funded with stolen cash, luxury watches over 9,000 quid, Mont Blanc pens, a £3,232 coffee machine. Like, what was the man doing?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. The Director of Sport at the Sun newspaper, Sean Custis, is in the studio and he's dressed up to the nines. Where are you off to, Sean?
Yeah, what a day to be dressed up to the nines. I'm looking forward to getting on the tube in this.
Totally the wrong day. Yeah.
I've got to say, yes, it's the League Managers Association annual dinner tonight, where they crown the Manager of the Year and the recognised managers from each division. But we're expecting Mikel Arteta to be crowned Manager of the Year tonight, what with having won the Premier League and the Champions League final to come. So I'm sure he's going to revel in that ahead of the weekend.
And he says that we are going to be champions. They got PSG on Saturday, Paris Saint-Germain. They're a good outfit. Will Arsenal beat them?
I think they will. I think the momentum's with them. I think there's a great feeling with them. And where Mikel said this, he hadn't said it in any press conferences, but he said it at a celebration party as Arsenal were enjoying their Premier League success. And he actually addressed the audience and said, we will be Champions League champions next Saturday. So he's laid it on the line. He expects it.
I think he couldn't really stand up and say, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, we're not going to make it. We'll lose
but often they say, we'll do our best. We hope to bring it back for you. But he's actually nailed it. He's actually said, we are going to be champions of Europe. Look, we know PSG are a good team, but they have vulnerabilities. Arsenal, you think, are a bit stronger. Except the front three for PSG. We'll probably talk about this a lot more during the week, because we do have another final to come tomorrow night, which is Crystal Palace's in the Conference League against Rayo Vallecano. And they'll be building up to that one today. Press conferences with Glasner and the like. And he's chasing 3 trophies in 2 years before he leaves. So we'll maybe get that one out of the way and then really concentrate on Arsenal after that. But it's great, isn't it? We've already got Aston Villa having won the Europa League, and can we make it a hat-trick with Villa?
Yeah, British
with
football, quite a summer for British football. What's this? I've got a note saying Keane v Bruno Rao.
Have you not seen this one?
No, I haven't, no.
So Bruno Fernandes won the assists trophy for the most assists, which we never used to consider a thing, but it's increasingly become a thing. I mean, you can pass the ball in theory 2 yards to your left to a striker who hits it in from 30 yards and you get an assist. But there's no doubt that Bruno Fernandes has been the most creative player in the Premier League this season. Roy Keane felt that the way he was talking in an interview suggested he was playing to get the assists record rather than score. But Bruno Fernandes went ballistic about this and said he was lying. That's not what he said, and he totally twisted his words. So he said this outright yesterday that wasn't the case. Keane posted some cryptic picture with a donkey on it, which we're not really sure if it refers to Fernandes or not. But the fact is, this is bubbling along quite nicely. Keane, of course, a talismanic figure for Man United, but he's increasingly making more and more enemies, even by Roy Keane standards.
He loves to attack Man United, doesn't he?
He doesn't want Carrick as manager. He doesn't like Carrick because partly, I think, because he took his shirt at Man United eventually. Keane had already gone, but Carrick arrived, got Keane's number.
There's that in the history.
Carrick's wife had a go at Keane after Keane had a go at Carrick for the way he did a particular interview, and Keane's never forgiven that one. He's, of course, had his famous bust-up, this is not Man United related, but had his famous bust-up with Mick McCarthy at the World Cup in 2002.
Of course he did, when he
which
flew
is the
home,
subject of film Saipan, which is out this year. It seems that he rubs everybody up the wrong way. Whether he cares or not is another matter.
I think he doesn't. That's his secret. He's the master.
He clearly doesn't.
He's the master of the feud. The feuds get you noticed.
He is, but of course he fell out with Fergie as well, and they've never repaired that one over an interview he did for MUTV, which never went out, which Fergie found out about, and he bulleted him. Whether Roy really wants to have enemies everywhere, do you really? Do you really want to do that? He's gathering them up, though, and now he's got Bruno Fernandes as one. And I think the fans are with Bruno. I think they're getting a bit sick of Roy Keane.
Yeah, he is a bit like, he's always moaning about something.
Argumentativeness.
Yeah, he is argumentative. That's
we're fairly argumentative, Kevin.
We are. Listen, just before you go, let's
you argue.
Let's get a few. Shut up, will you? Let's get a few words in about Nicholas Jackson.
Yes.
Now, he was thought to be on his way, but he's said he's happy to stay at Chelsea as long as Xabi Alonso picks him for the first team every time. I would say Mr. Alonso won't take kindly to that.
It's very hard to get that sort of guarantee. Look, Chelsea bulleted him, really, didn't they? They sent him away on loan to Bayern Munich, saying you're not good enough to be our out-and-out striker. And yet, when people reflect on Chelsea from last year, although he missed a lot of chances, they think, well, actually, he scored a reasonable amount of goals, and he might be better back here, certainly better than Liam Delap. And maybe we should have him back, but he hasn't been holding down a first-team place at Bayern Munich, where he was on loan. But then Harry Kane was the main centre forward, so that would be difficult. But he's ready to come back to Chelsea, but who's going to guarantee you start? No manager guarantees you start unless you're Messi, Ronaldo, Kane, that sort of thing. I'm not sure he's in that bracket. You're right. You can't really dictate to the manager that you want to start, can you?
Not to someone like Alonso. You certainly can't. Interesting situation. Really interesting situation. Well, listen, Sean, give my best to Arteta. Tell him that I think he's had a very good season.
I'll say you're asking after him.
Yeah, please do. Enjoy your night, though, seriously. That is the brilliant Director of Sport at The Sun, Sean Custis, all in your favourite newspaper on the back pages tomorrow. Back in a little while with Lord Moynihan to go through some of the big stories of the day. Stay where you are.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
In the noughties, sending the then Prince Andrew around the world as a trade envoy to promote British trade internationally was thought to be one of the great wastes of money of all time. All he did was feather his own pocket. He was to diplomacy what Ronnie Corbett was to basketball. He was absolutely hopeless, rubbed people up the wrong way. And yet, in the middle of this disastrous tenure, he persuaded the government that he was such a valuable asset. They agreed to increase his expenses. He didn't technically get paid for his role, his globe-trotting role, which earned him the nickname Air Miles Andy, but he got lots of expenses, so it cost us, the British taxpayers, a lot of money in the middle of this ongoing deferential disaster. It was all about giving the job to the Queen, you know, be me ever so humble, give the Queen's son a job, you know. He's better than us, he's a royal, isn't he? Well, in the middle of this useless tenure, this deferential disaster, he persuaded the government that he was such a vital asset to this country that they agreed to increase his vast expenses. What the hell was that all about? What a ridiculous country this is sometimes. 0344 499 1000. We'll talk about that with a royal biographer, Angela Levin, in just a little while. But first, let's go through some of the big stories of the day with Conservative peer, Lord Daniel Moylan. Welcome, Daniel.
Kevin, hello, how are you?
Very, very well. Thank you for joining us. Let me ask you your thoughts first. A lot of Labour politicians today, including the Prime Minister, including Prime Ministerial hopeful Wes Streeting, and a whole slew of others, climbing on the bandwagon to ban social media for the under-16s, like it's been banned in Australia. The word is that Keir Starmer, aware that he may not long be for this world at number 10 Downing Street, hopes that this will be his legacy. Socialists, politicians, they love the idea of their legacy being, I banned something. Starmer apparently wants to ban social media. Well, I'm going to tell you what I think about this. I think the banning of social media is in the province of parents. Mothers and fathers should decide this, not the government, partly because kids will get round any ban they impose anyway. But what are your thoughts? Do you think we should ban social media for the under-16s, or should we go the free and liberal route and leave banning of anything access to social media to mums and dads?
I think I agree with you. Mums and dads are the most important people in all of this. But as some of them have represented to the Prime Minister today, it is very difficult indeed to get children away from the addictive qualities of social media. And we're not talking about addictive now in the sense that, you just like scrolling. This is addictive in the sense that algorithms are designed to try and to make stuff addictive and draw kids in, and I think that the big tech companies have been given a chance to put that right voluntarily, and there's even a regulatory system in place that I always thought was never going to work, but there's a regulatory system in place. I think up to a certain age, and whether it's 16 or not, I think there is an argument for saying that a ban would be appropriate, at least to see if it works. Now, I agree with you. Kids are always going to be clever at getting round bans. But I think that the way, we've got ourselves into a position now with the tech companies where they really are gaming all of this. And they're doing it in a way that I think is deeply corrosive of individuals' autonomy and freedom of choice.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely a problem, and when you see the parents whose children have taken their own lives due to online harm, then my argument about don't ban it tends to take a bit of a hit. But I still, always recoil from the idea of more.
Yeah, I think your instincts are absolutely right, Kevin.
Yeah, I just recoil from more laws, more regulations, more rules. These socialists, this Labour lot, they love it. They love banning things,
They love it.
sticking their nose into our lives. Let's move on. Your thoughts, Daniel, if you don't mind, on these three rapists, these young rapists, who a judge called Nicholas Rowland saw fit to praise in court. So you've handled this trial very well, and you're young, you couldn't have known the meaning of consent. I would contend they knew the meaning of consent, which is why they held a knife to their victim's throat to make her consent during a 90-minute ordeal. This judge let these three thugs walk free from court. Very, very minimal sentences at all. Why is it? I guess I got two questions about this. My first question to you, Daniel, is this: why is it that we as a society, we as a people, don't really have any significant way, a significant method by which we can punish judges who make egregious mistakes? We can't even reprimand them. We can't even tell them off. We certainly can't fire them, except in very exceptional circumstances. Shouldn't the people have easier access to making these judges who make ludicrous mistakes? This sentence was ludicrously lenient. Shouldn't we have access to making these people accountable for these ridiculous verdicts they hand down?
Well, Kevin, I'm going to disappoint you again about this, actually, because although I'm happy to argue with any lefty judge who misinterprets the European Convention of Human Rights and things like that, when it comes to criminal trials, I always believe that you should defer to the judge who has been there in court and heard all of the evidence. And then, you get then people saying, oh, this is a terrible sentence. It's either too lenient or occasionally it's too harsh. And I'm a politician, I'm meant to stand up and say, yeah, it's a really terrible sentence. But I haven't heard any of the bloody evidence. I've just heard what's been on television. I don't know anything about it. Now, the judge did say, I understand, but he thought that if you put these kids in a youth offender institute or whatever they're called nowadays, they would end up worse criminals than if you didn't. And that is a terrible indictment of our youth justice system. But I believe it's probably true. But then you ask us, is there a way of correcting for this? Is there a way of putting it right? And there is. We have a system for putting it right, which has now gone into effect, putting it right if it's wrong in the first place. And that's to send it to the Court of Appeal. And we're going to see what the Court of Appeal says and whether they agree with the judge or disagree with the judge. And again, I've got nothing to add to that because they'll have all the evidence and they understand the law of all of this and the sentencing code and so on. And I'm just some hick answering questions on a radio program.
To another hick.
Another hick. To get people worked up. So I think we need to calm down a little bit about this. And the Prime Minister's got himself, for him, very worked up. And he's seething and raging. But the fact is, it's in the hands of the Court of Appeal now, and I'd like to hear what they've got to say.
Yeah, I just think judges should be more answerable to the people, like they are in America.
I think that there is a case for, at least for senior judicial appointments. I'm a complete outlier in this. Absolutely nobody agrees with me, possibly with the exception of you, Kevin. I am someone who thinks that at least for senior judicial appointments, there ought to be some sort of hearing in a parliamentary setting before they're appointed, so that we know something about them. I'm not saying necessarily.
I'd go along with that. I think that's a good idea.
I'm not saying necessarily a vote on them. And if you think it's going to be too aggressive and undignified, then get the House of Lords to do it, because there's nothing undignified about the House of Lords or nothing aggressive about the House of Lords.
Of course not. Who would ever suggest that, Lord Moylan?
It'd be like going to a tea party. But at least we would know something about these people before they're appointed, and we'd be able to see, do they have certain characteristics in common?
I think that's a very good suggestion. I think we should look into it. They're just too remote from the people, I think, judges. We have no recourse. We cannot get to them. We cannot punish them. We don't know anything about how they're appointed. We need more transparency in this system, I think. Let's move on to the most important political issue of the day, and that is the former Scottish National Party chief executive Peter Murrell's collection of Lalique salt and pepper grinders that cost him £2,600. He also bought a £120,000 motorhome, an £81,000 Jaguar. He spent nearly £1,000 on some stairs into his library at the family home, at the marital home, and so on and so forth. He even bought luxury chopsticks at one point. The list of luxury items that Peter Murrell was buying when he was chief executive of the party, that we now know with embezzled money from the SNP, is extraordinary. When Nicola Sturgeon says, I knew nothing of this, I had no suspicions, I mean, I've said, I think I'm with the majority here. I'm sorry to sound so blunt about this, but I don't believe her. Do you believe her, Daniel?
Well, I just want to say that over my life, Kevin, I've built up a small collection of Lalique glass, which I have adorned. I don't have any pepper pots or salt grinders or anything like that. But do you know what's happening to this stuff? Is any of it going up for sale? I could get some of it on eBay.
You want to get involved in the sell-off of...
Well, you know, they've got to sell it off, haven't they? Where I could help sort of fill out parts of my collection. If you hear anything about that, let me know.
I certainly will.
I think that what he was collecting but not using, that's the same strange thing. He doesn't seem to have used any of this. Did he ever go off on a holiday in the campus?
No, that's the word
was he sitting at home grinding
That's Daniel. The word is that he was quite a lonely guy, spent a lot of time at home buying all this stuff. The question is, though, Nicola, his then wife, or still is his wife, but they were living together, said she didn't even have a suspicion of this. She said she fully cooperated with the police investigation. In fact, we now know that she answered 10 hours of interrogated questions by saying no comment every single time.
I think, you know, she probably will have reached the conclusion, I'm living with a bit of a weirdo. I mean, you know, insofar as, you know, there's a camp.
I might suggest that he reached the same conclusion, but don't listen to me.
That'd be for different reasons. But, you know, insofar as a camper van has landed in the drive,
yes,
and nobody seems to be able to account for it or why it's there. And I asked him, and he said it was a party thing, and I couldn't think what the party was going to use the camper van for. And I may have reached the view that I was living with a bit of a weirdo, but I think he probably is. I think there's something not quite right about him.
I agree. Yeah.
There's something about this compulsive buying of, I mean, not particularly luxurious items, and nor things that you'd actually enjoy. If you'd heard that he'd gone off to an international conference of annoying nationalist movements somewhere in the in the South Seas, and he'd spent 4 or 5 weeks there in a luxury hotel blowing money on himself, it would sort of fit a pattern. We'd all understand what that was about. This is just very, very curious and strange.
It is, and I think it's the ordeal is not over for Nicola. Increasing calls for her to come clean about what she knew, but she says she didn't know anything, but people are finding that very, very difficult to believe. He also bought a Beatles special edition fountain pen and rollerball for £1,475. You're exactly right, Daniel. You look at this item, it's all listed here. Very strange, very strange. Yeah. Everything he bought, you didn't need to buy. And you wonder what was really going on.
And you wonder what pleasure he's getting from them.
Exactly, you know, exactly.
It's not even as if you're living the life of Riley on them. You just got a drawer full of pens. I mean,
exactly right. Exactly. It's a very, very strange case, but I don't think we've heard the last of it. Let me ask you about this story caught my eye this morning. A record number of social housing homes are being granted to people with incomes of £50,000 and more. The Labour government has scrapped any limits on income with regard to your qualifying for social housing. So more and more people earning with incomes of £50,000 or more are being given social housing. Well, that seems a little unfair for people who genuinely might need help on the housing level because they're not earning £50,000 or more.
Yeah, I don't know of any particular cases. I mean, the fact is that decades ago now, we changed the system in Britain so that social housing would be allocated on the basis of what's called need. Now, you might think that sounds very sensible. You should give social housing to people who need it, and the ones who need it most should be at the top of the queue. That sounds like a very sensible system. But in practice, what it came down to meaning is that people with families and children, especially single mothers with children. Now, if you say that income doesn't matter, then your position on the list, your priority on the list, will be determined by those family circumstances, not by your income. Then there will be people with incomes, working families, who will go into social housing. And Labour is very pleased about that because they want lots of people to go into social housing, whereas a proper Conservative government wants to see people moving on to property ownership and becoming owner-occupiers as fast as they can. You also worry about the fact that when you are building new social housing, as Labour keeps calling for, none of it is actually available to young people who might want to get on the housing ladder. It is for people who qualify as being in need for social housing purposes, and that isn't, you know, your trainee barrister or your trainee secretary or whatever who's looking to get on the housing ladder. It isn't those people at all. They'll never be in need for this purpose.
I'll tell you what worries me about this, Daniel, is I just think it plays into this very justified image of a government, a Labour government, that basically wants to pay for everything for everybody. You know, well, this is just another example of the welfare state spiralling out of control. I mean,
everybody, Kevin, you've got to understand. These people in government and in Parliament in the Labour Party come from very, very similar backgrounds. They're nearly all people who've worked in the voluntary organisations, so-called charitable sector and so on. And they've got a certain sort of constituency, certain sorts of people that they want to boost. And the government wants to pay for that sort of person, but not for everybody else. In fact, everybody else has to pay extra tax in order to pay off the people that they feel they owe something to. I mean, the other group they feel they owe something to is the unions, and they pay them off with employment legislation that will make strikes easier and things like that. But when it comes to direct public expenditure, it is that group of those who are in need of or on the margins of needing welfare are always going to be cosseted by a Labour government, when in fact what the best thing for many of them would be, especially the kids, would be methods and prompts for getting them into work. But that isn't what Labour wants to do. That's not how they see their constituency.
Which is a tragedy, frankly, a national tragedy. Daniel, it's great to have you on the show. Please come on again very soon again. That is Lord Daniel Moylan, Conservative peer, with some of his thoughts on some of the big stories of the day. Let me know what you think about some of the issues we've been talking about. 03444991000. Do you believe Nicola Sturgeon? No, me neither. 03444991000. Next up, though, we're going to talk about Prince Andrew, who managed to persuade the government back in the noughties that he was such a valuable national asset that the government gave him even more money, of our money, British taxpayers' money. Yeah, we should never have given that oaf a single penny, should we? We'll talk about that next with royal biographer Angela Levin. Stay tuned.
If your other half came home with £125,000 worth of motorhome, wouldn't you go, darling, where did you get that from? Yeah. Have that turned up on the driveway? Where did you get the motorhome from? It's a very expensive motorhome. £81,000 Jaguar, Volkswagen Golf, partly funded with stolen cash, luxury watches over 9,000 quid, Mont Blanc pens, a £3,232 coffee machine. Like, what was the man doing?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Let's go straight over to my next guest. She is royal biographer Angela Levin. Hi, Angela.
Hello, nice to see you.
Always a pleasure. I want to get to Prince Andrew in a second, but I wanted to get your take on the latest news emanating from Team Meghan. She's been worried about the palpable unpopularity of the Sussexes, of her and Harry. According to reports, she's discovered, she's zoned in on what she thinks the problem is. Why are they so unpopular around the world, this couple? It's Harry. It's not her. She's decided it's Harry. That everywhere he goes, he brings with him unpopularity, he causes drama, he takes the story of the royal feud with him, and she has apparently concluded that the best way to restore her popularity is to be seen with her husband much fewer times, less and less. It's extraordinary, isn't it?
I don't know, I read it actually in the Express, and I noticed that it says believes, she believes. Oh no, we think she believes. So I'm not sure this is absolutely true. If it is, it's the most disgusting thing you could have, because she would be absolutely nothing, well, she's still not much, but she should be absolutely nothing without Harry. I mean, he got a wedding for her. He's given her masses of jewellery, very expensive, some from his mother, so they're even doubly expensive. Everything she wants. And she's somebody who can't think that she's ever wrong. We know that before, but because she thinks she's never wrong, that any mistake is Harry's. And to say that about your husband, who you know has mental difficulties and he loves her to pieces. Why, I don't know, but there we are.
I mean, you know, she believes she's the one who's going to make all the money and that he's a problem. What I think she doesn't take on board, Angela, is the truth. The truth is, however long she's with this guy, he will always be the main attraction. He is the king's son. I don't want to be dismissive of Hollywood starlets, but that's all she is. She's a wannabe Hollywood actor. He is a member of the royal family. He is heir to the British throne. He's the main attraction, not her. She's his sidekick.
Yeah, it's disgusting, isn't it? And this is similar to what she's done before, when she said that her wedding, £33 million was absolutely rubbish. She didn't like it. And you absolutely want to think, you nasty piece of work, that you could say that. And she's always, anything she says is a bad thing, she comes up with it's never her. And she never listens. Lots of all the staff have said they tried to help, but she doesn't want to because she thinks she knows. Now, Netflix won't even do anything with her now because she doesn't listen. She doesn't help herself. Yeah. I think it's very sad, actually, that she should say that for someone like Harry, who is finding life quite difficult and loves her to bits. And she if she's meaning it, everyone hears it and saying it's only me, it's wonderful. She should have looked at the number of people listening to her talking about children and how they should be looked after. It was empty. So how can she think that anybody wants to come and see what she's saying? They don't want to at all.
I would say that relationship is doomed to end in heartbreak for poor old Harry. Let's move on, though. Let's talk about Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. We're talking about his time when he was trade envoy for this country throughout the noughties. 2001 to 2011. He travelled the globe, travelled the world at our expense, taxpayers' expense, allegedly promoting British trade internationally. Now, it's generally accepted that he was worse than useless at this. He just used it to feather his own nest, line his own pockets, didn't really do much for British trade. In fact, caused some serious problems because he was not exactly a model of diplomacy. He often caused incidents with his rude and boorish behaviour wherever he went. So it was purely for the Queen that we allowed this guy to travel the world at our expense. In itself, something that I think was a massive mistake, but we let him do this. In the middle of it, we now discover, this is astonishing, that he persuaded the British government, I think it was in 2008, that he was such a vital and valuable national asset that we should increase his expenses, and they agreed to do it. So he didn't officially get paid for this role, but he got extremely generous expenses, stayed at the finest hotels, travelled first class everywhere with a huge entourage. Apparently always took his own ironing board with him to make sure his clothes were properly creased. That was the pomp and style in which he travelled. Anyway, 2008, he went to the government and said, "You're not giving me enough money." And they said, "Quite right, Your Highness," and gave him more money. Absolute madness.
Yes, I think they're frightened of the Queen. You know, if the Queen wants something done, these people who are at the top of their jobs of making sure that she's okay, they don't care. They just want to give him the money, and that'll shut him up because he was very demanding, and to think that he would get masses of money and he goes wherever he likes. He wants sorts of countries and others not, and it's nothing to do with making a good case. It's seeing nice girls and all that sort of thing. It's been the most disgusting response of what's happened, isn't it? And even when I looked at the picture of his room, his house today, you know, looks a beautiful house.
Yeah, I saw that, Angela. I thought, is that supposed to be his reduced circumstances? That house would cost £1 million, even in Norfolk. I'm not having a go at Norfolk, but property's cheaper up there than it is in London. But that is £1 million I So that's what we're asked to accept. As Prince Andrew, or the former Prince Andrew's reduced circumstances. I get it about the King. He feels a duty of care to his younger brother. He can't stand Andrew, but he feels a duty of care. But when I look at that house, when I know that he's got a full staff there, he's got a cook, he's got a housekeeper, he's got a butler, and also he's got full security, I think of the King, I think, are you not being just a little bit too generous to this guy who's brought the royal family into such disgrace that they're facing an existential problem? I think the King's treating Andrew too well in these circumstances. What do you think?
Well, he doesn't have many people looking after him now. He's got one person who helps around. And Charles wouldn't let him take anybody else. He used to have that. But he's only got one person who can help him, and he often gets his food from Waitrose now. They come up with food for him, so he's not getting that much spoiling. But the other thing is that I feel sorry for the King was that Andrew was incredibly nasty to him. He was really difficult because his parents liked Andrew better because they liked him because he was very clever at sports and all that. Look what he did in the Navy.
Clever at, I thought you were going to say he was very clever. Clever at sports, but not clever. Not clever.
Yes, not clever, no. And he tried to persuade his mother that Charles wasn't going to be the next one, the heir. And so he did that a great deal, and it was very hard for Charles, and somehow he feels he doesn't want to upset his mother, she's not there. He doesn't want to upset his mother, but he's not giving him very much. And he was there very near yesterday, and he wouldn't go and see him. He was half a mile away, and he wouldn't go and see him. He went, and so he's not trying to see him or talk to him. He doesn't like him, never has.
Yeah.
But he feels he does have this responsibility. And the girls, that's very hard for them as well.
Yeah, I wouldn't criticise the king for looking after his brother. The brother, as you say, he can't stand Andrew, but I wouldn't criticise him for not throwing his younger brother out on the streets. Don't get me wrong, but I look at that house and he's living in such reduced circumstances. I mean, it's got about 12 cars parked outside it in its huge courtyard. I mean, it's not very reduced, is it?
Well, that's a lot of protection now because somebody came up and tried to jump over the wall, and so it's a different state, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't think he has a nice time. I mean, that satisfies me.
Yeah, no, you're right.
He doesn't entertain people. He doesn't satisfy me. He's not wearing smart clothes. I don't know whether he can get hold of a girlfriend. I don't think so. And his children are very upset with him, and so it's quite a pile that he needs to think through.
Well, any girl who ends up with Andrew now, I would say to that girl, this guy is not a keeper. Angela, really good to talk to you as always. Thank you so much for coming on. That's the excellent royal biographer Angela Levin with all the latest royal news. Next up, it's you for the rest of the show. 03444 991000. We'll take calls. I'll read some messages. I don't know if we've got any WhatsApp voice notes, but if we have, I will play them out. That's all the way to the top of the show. I think Peter Cardwell is back with us tonight at 7 p.m. But for the rest of the show, 03444 991000. Let's talk. It's good to talk on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Now, a bit of broadcasting housekeeping, folks. I've got to go through the full list we got of the candidates in Makerfield, because that list I read out earlier did not include the exciting new entrants into that electoral competition. So this is the full list of candidates at the Makerfield by-election. Ready? Here we go. Jake Austin, Liberal Democrats. Count Binface Party. Andy Burnham, the Labour Party. Dan Clark, the Libertarian Party. John Alfred Dyer, Independent. Ed Gemmell, Climate Party. Paul Richard Gould, Independent. Alan Howling Lord Hope, the official Monster Raving Loony Party. Robert Kenyon, Reform UK. Robert Pownall, Independent. Rebecca Shepherd, Restore Britain. Sarah Wakefield, Green Party. Peter Ward, Rejoin EU. And Michael Winstanley, the Conservative Party. Let's move on now to our competition. The FIFA World Cup 2026 is almost here, and thanks to Adidas, the tournament's official match ball supplier, our friends at TalkSport are giving you the chance to be there. Adidas is sending you and a friend to Dallas to see England versus Croatia live on June the 17th, with return flights, accommodation, spending money, tickets, and your very own Adidas official match ball trionda. Be at England's first game in the FIFA World Cup at one of the world's best stadiums. Ready to get that winning feeling? Here's how to enter.
Get ready for that winning feeling. For your chance to win, head to talksportwin.com or text TALK to 83338. Texts and online entries cost £2.50 plus your standard network rate. Or call 0343 418 7260. Lines close 1st of June 2026 at 4 p.m. That's when you'll need to answer your phone if it rings. 18 plus UK residents only. This is a network promotion. See full terms and conditions at talksport.com/win. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 83338 now. Full T's and C's at win.talk.tv.
This is from Amanda. It's one of the texts I've had. I've lost all respect now for Rupert Lowe, who I once admired. He's lost the plot over his first personal vendetta with Farage. Do you agree with Amanda? 03444 99 1000. Zoe in Lancashire talking about Nicola Sturgeon says, so you're telling me she never noticed the new toilet seat that suddenly appeared either? Nope, sorry, a load of crap. That's what Zoe said, that she knew nothing. I don't believe that they were skint either. You can tell his greed by the rubbish he bought. Well, they certainly weren't skint, not while he was embezzling 400 grand from the SNP and going on that bizarre spending spree. I'll read some more texts and messages in a minute, but first let's go to the phone and let's talk to Michael in Birmingham. Hello, Michael.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me okay?
I've got you fine, yeah. What would you like to say?
Yeah, I don't think enough's being made of the slouch pouch onesie. It's £76. I mean, you know, what man's attire is complete without one of those? How did she not notice that? But anyway, what I was going to call about, what I wanted to talk about was the guy you had on before, the Conservative peer. I really had to disagree with him about
Daniel Moylan.
Yeah, the judges. I mean, look, you don't have to sit through the trial to know that, was it 2 or 3 girls were raped there, and you don't have to sit through the trial to know that those people were found guilty, and you don't have to sit through a trial to know that anybody with a modicum of common sense would think that people who do that sort of thing belong in prison. And we need to get to a point where judges are accountable. I know in the States they have these interviews you see on TV and they give them a hard time, you know, and they go through their social media and that. But the judiciary, I don't think, is independent anymore anyway. I mean, it's politicised itself, where you're getting these woke judgments, activist judgments and all of that sort of thing. I think that they do need, you know, to be held accountable, particularly if they release people and then they go on and do something completely egregious. Something's got to be done there.
I agree. I just think, you know, they're too remote from the people. They work for the people. That's us. We have no way of punishing them. We have no real way of reprimanding them. We have no way of sacking them. They exist in, you know, in a kind of bubble where they cannot be in any way even sort of told off. about their ludicrous decisions. And what this judge, Nicholas Rowland, did, Daniel Moylan saying, oh, well, we didn't know all the details. We knew enough of the details. You do not let anyone go who held a girl at knife point for 90 minutes and raped her and filmed her. He let those 3 thugs walk the streets after that. That was a mistake, and we should be able to punish that judge for his ridiculous decision.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, to say that they're not politicised, you know, is ridiculous. Something needs to be done about that. And let's not forget, they should at the very least be told that it's not the defendant's well-being that they consider. The first thing they consider in a guilty verdict is the victim.
Absolutely.
That should be their first and foremost.
And I think also, Michael, final point on this, that since we're clearly going to be burdened with stupid judges like Nicholas Rowland, who my guess is probably reads the Guardian newspaper, then let's just make rape mandatory prisonable offence. So if it's rape like murder, you have to go to jail. So we can stop these dim judges letting rapists go free. I mean, it's the worst crime in the world apart from murder. Nobody should walk free from court after raping someone and raping a fellow human being. It's terrible. Totally agree with you, Michael. Good call. Thank you for ringing. Michael in Birmingham. Let's go to Tom in Rugby. Hello, Tom. You want to talk about migrants? What would you like to say?
Hi, Kevin. Yeah, you talked earlier about the problem of these migrants claiming to be teenagers.
Yeah, tend to be children, yeah.
Children, having to claim to be special, very expensive, you know. Look, there's an absolutely simple test to do to find the answer, the truth.
Yeah.
You take an X-ray of their left wrist, and there is a feature there called a growth plate, which closes. It disappears at the end of puberty. If it's there, they're teenagers. If there's no evidence of it, they're liars. Simple as that. But I doubt any government will have the cojones to actually do it, because all the human rights lawyers would bleat, oh, you know, you can't impose radiation on these poor innocent people. It would cost just about nothing, a cheap X-ray machine and a radiographer to push the button, and I could teach you how to look at the images within about 3 minutes.
There's a slight problem here in so far as Labour have got a thing called the Borders Act, which is coming into power as we speak, coming into use as we speak. And if migrants refuse to take age tests, refuse to be subjected to age tests, we cannot treat them as grown-ups. So all they've got to do, according to the Borders Act, is say, no, I refuse to submit myself to an age test, and then we have to treat them as children. It's ridiculous.
The government can change the rules. They're the government. That's what they're there for.
Well, they're the ones who brought this act in.
And crazy, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, don't imagine or don't optimistically hope that this government's going to make a logical decision, because there's your problem. Look, age testing is easy enough. It's just that we seem to have a reticence to do it. And you get these guys turn up with receding hairlines, beards, deep voices, Adam's apples, and they end up in school. They're sent to school, you know, as 14-year-olds, and they're clearly not. We do it all the time. It's ridiculous. Good idea, though, Tom. Maybe common sense will one day prevail, but don't bet the farm on it. Good call from Tom in Rugby there. Let's go to break. More of your calls when we come back.
If your other half came home with £125,000 worth of motorhome, wouldn't you go, darling, where did you get that from? Yeah. Have that turned up on the driveway? Where did you get the motorhome from? It's a very expensive motorhome. £81,000 Jaguar, Volkswagen Golf, partly funded with stolen cash, luxury watches over 9,000 quid, Mont Blanc pens, a £3,232 coffee machine. What was the man doing?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Here's a message from Clay. Hi Kev, the stupid BBC saying about the weather, I pay a bloody fortune to go on holiday abroad to get this weather. I'm 72 years old and a still wet behind the ears 20-year-old moron is telling me how to survive during a heat wave. Yeah, I think we're a bit sick of all this mollycoddling, isn't it? The BBC, the sun comes out, they say we're all going to die. I don't really want your advice on how to survive when the weather's hot. I think I've worked out how to do that. It's unbelievable, isn't it? Mal says, so the Reform candidate who has allegedly deleted his social media posts is going to be a credible candidate. Well, Mal, I'm sure he's going to be a credible candidate, but at this rate he's going to be a losing candidate thanks to Rupert Lowe. Let's go back to the phones. Let's talk to Andrea in Sussex. Hello, Andrea.
Hello, Kevin.
How are you doing? All right.
Yeah, 2 quick points. On the rapists, those 3 savages didn't even have the decency to plead guilty. They put those poor girls through the trauma of a trial, reliving their ordeal, and that judge has the audacity to congratulate them for their conduct. It's
disgusting, isn't it?
How dare he? How dare he?
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. What he did was praising them, telling them they couldn't understand the meaning of content. It was, he got this very, very badly wrong and should be punished. But apparently we can't punish him.
I think it shows his view of women.
We don't know about that, but certainly. Critics might say this was the judgment of a male judge who didn't show enough empathy for the female victims of these horrific rapes. It's
a disgrace. It's a disgrace. And very quick, on Nicola Sturgeon, pull the other one. It's got bells on it.
Andrea, 2 very good points. Thank you very much for ringing. Excellent call. Andrea in Essex. Nicola Sturgeon, pull the other one. It's got bells on it. I think that's what everybody thinks. It really is. She's stretching plausibility, to say the least, isn't she? This is from Brian. Brian says, I think there should be a mandatory 12-month prison sentence for illegally entering illegally entering the UK. This would give the government the authority to deport or detain these individuals. Yeah, Brian. Problem is they don't want to do anything like that. They are breaking our laws, but where would we put them all? I don't suppose there's a room to put all these migrants anyway. But yeah, I mean, it would be an idea, it would be a start, but don't count on it. Let's go back to the phones. Let's talk to Herbie in Harrow. Hi, Herbie.
Good evening, Kevin. How are you this evening on a lovely day like today?
It's amazing. Fantastic day. But don't forget, I tuned into the BBC. Apparently we'll all be dead by the end of the week because it's too hot.
Well, that's all right.
And we'll forget to drink water. Thank God we've got the state broadcaster to remind us to drink water when it's hot. It's great, isn't it? That's why I pay my licence fee. I don't know about you.
Well, they'll be telling us how to eat next, won't they? And dress, you know, what next?
Oh, yeah, they certainly will. You want to talk about this judge, Herbie? What would you like to say?
I think he should be barred from holding any sexual cases whatsoever. Is a disgrace.
Any
to
cases?
tradition.
If that's his judgment, I think he should just not be a judge.
No, well, exactly. I mean to say the man's completely out of order. What does it say to the victims? Well, these lads can do what they like because you're a victim, and that's it. You know, simply we don't want to criminalise them. We're already criminals by what they did, for God's sake.
By the way, did you notice what the judge said to them? He said, I don't want to criminalise you. Certainly no need to send you to prison today. None of you have been in any, wait for it, in any big trouble before. In other words, they had been in trouble.
Yes. Okay, yeah, but Kevin, it makes no... This is a very, very serious crime.
Yes.
Been in trouble before is immaterial. They've raped 2 girls and they should go to prison, as far as I'm concerned, for 10 years minimum and let them suffer, because these girls got to suffer for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, so they've had a life sentence and this judge didn't seem to worry about them at all.
Exactly, Kevin. You know, some of these people are completely out of touch with reality. We are suffering for fools completely at the moment. Whether it's a heat wave that's striking them or what, I've got no idea. But something's going on which doesn't make sense to me. And I can't put it all together, Kevin. I'm sorry, but it's just gone wild and madness.
Well, I'll tell you what we do need. We need more accountability from our judges. You know, it transpires that from this debacle, this shambles of this guy letting these 3 monstrous rapists walk free from court, transpires that we have no way of punishing this judge. We can't even admonish him. We can't even tell him off. We can't even reprimand him, let alone punish him or, in the ideal world, sack him. We need to bring judges into the realms of accountability. They work for the people. The people should have the ability to sack them or punish them if we feel they have not performed their duties properly, and this judge has completely failed in his duties.
Totally, Kevin. Absolutely, totally. There's no answer to, unfortunately, the problems that we've now got. Nobody seems to want to do anything. Nobody wants to be accountable. What's going on in the world today? What is this country coming to? Are we going to have completely disarray and completely, you know, wild animals going around doing what they like? Oh, Kevin, it's gone beyond belief, isn't it, really?
Yeah, well, I just think Britain, thanks to successive governments, particularly this useless Labour government, we're just not a serious country anymore. A country that does not punish rape properly is not a serious country. And it's also a very dangerous country for women and children. Unbelievable. I'm with you all the way, Herbie. I hardly know what to say. But good call, as always. Good to talk to you, mate. Herbie in Harrow. Let's go to John in Newcastle. Hello, John. What would you like to say? You want to talk about migrants?
Oh, yes, about the migrant situation. It's an ongoing situation, isn't it?
Yes.
We have the Tories giving plenty of money to the French government, and now we've got the Labour government doing exactly the same thing. Hundreds of thousands of pounds. That's just our taxpayers' money, isn't it?
We just gave France £662 million.
Yes. And can we talk about a man called Viktor Orban? He was the ex-Prime Minister of Hungary for 10 years.
Yeah.
Now, he was a man that was in the European Union, and how he said he didn't want any immigrants in his country, and with the European Union's permission, he didn't have. But what he had to do was to pay thousands of euros, apparently every day, as it went on like that.
Well, if you remember of the EU, it costs you money. That's for damn sure.
Well, this is it. And the fact is, he's in the European Union. We are not in the European Union. So why can't we do the same as what he did, and we wouldn't have to pay the money to the European Union in any case?
Yeah, but it's not the European Union we paid. We paid £662 million to France to allegedly stop the boats on the beach or stop the migrants, but they don't seem to do that very often. And altogether, we've now given Macron, over the past 3 or 4 years, more than £1 billion for them to stop the migrants on the northern French beaches, but they don't seem to do that.
Well, the reality is, of course, that if you give them the opportunity to come here for free food, for free residence, everything free, they don't do that in France. You can't do that. They don't put you in hotels like they do.
I know, yeah. You're lucky if you get a tent there. Exactly, exactly.
Yes,
this is the promised land, John. This is the promised land. That's why they come. John, very good call. Thank you very much. Give us a call again. That's John in Newcastle. Well, he's in the studio and he's wearing shorts. It must be hot out there. It's Peter Cardwell. Hello,
34 degrees or something crazy like that. I've actually just been in Northern Ireland for a few days with my parents, and I've come to an epiphany about what I want out of life.
Okay, what is that?
I thought, what I want is a £110 pencil sharpener, and I want to spend £175 on chopsticks. Yeah. That's what I want to do.
It's, I mean, Nicola Sturgeon, somebody just phoned me to say, yeah, pull the other one, Nicola, it's got bells on it. I mean, she's going to have to do more than this.
I don't know about you, Kevin. I mean, if someone bought a £3,200 coffee machine or a £1,100 telescope for my home, I think I'd probably notice it.
I think that Peter Murrell had psychological problems because this is pointless spending. It's quite.
If I had £600,000, I just wouldn't buy
buying stuff he didn't
need.
As far as we know, he never ever used the £120,000 motorhome he bought.